You arrive at the edge of evening as if you have been walking all day because you have. The light is thinning, stretching itself low across the prairie, and you feel the quiet urgency that settles over everyone when the sun begins to slip away. This is not the gentle dusk of a settled town. This is a working dusk, a narrowing window in which every task must be finished before cold and darkness take full hold. You sense it immediately, even if no one says it aloud. Night on the Oregon Trail is not something that simply happens. It is something you must prepare for or suffer through. You slow your pace as the wagons ahead begin to fan out and stop. The long line that creaked and groaned across the day now relaxes into stillness. Oxen are guided aside, horses reined in, voices soften. The land around you looks endless, but the place where you stop feels suddenly very small, defined not by fences or walls, but by necessity. You feel the temperature drop as soon as the sun touches the horizon. The warmth you carried in your body from walking begins to leak away, and you realize how quickly cold can reclaim you when motion stops. You're not thinking yet about sleep in the modern sense. There is no bed waiting, no room to retreat into. Sleep here is something you negotiate with the land, the weather, and your own exhaustion. As twilight deepens, you become aware of how tired you truly are. Your muscles ache with a dull, spreading heaviness, and yet your mind stays alert. There is too much to notice, too much to do, and too much at stake in the coming hours. Around you, the prairie seems to hold its breath. Grass rustles softly in the wind, and the sky stretches wide and pale, already deepening toward a blue and grey. You feel exposed beneath it, aware of how small a human body is when there is nothing overhead but open air. This awareness would have been unfamiliar to many emigrants at first, especially those who came from wooded regions or towns, where night arrived, gently cushioned by buildings and trees. Out here, night arrives like a presence, visible and inevitable. You notice how people move differently now. The easy chatter of midday is gone. Words are shorter, more practical. Someone calls out about water. Another points towards slightly higher ground. These decisions are being made quickly based on experience learned sometimes the hard way. You sense that where you sleep tonight will matter more than you fully understand yet. A few feet too low and cold air will pool around you, a few feet too exposed, and the wind will steal what little warmth you can keep. As the wagons come to rest, you feel the subtle shift from travel to survival mode. This is the rhythm of the trail. Day is for movement, night is for endurance. The fading light presses everyone forward, urging hands to work faster. You become aware of how the cold sharpens your senses. The smell of earth grows stronger. The creak of leather, the clink of metal, the low murmur of voices all seem clearer as the air cools. You imagine what this moment felt like in the 1840s and 1850s, when the Oregon Trail carried tens of thousands westward. Many of those people had never slept outdoors for weeks at a time, let alone months. For them, dusk must have brought a mix of relief and apprehension. Relief that the day's miles were done, apprehension about what the night would demand of them. You feel both now settling into your chest as the sky darkens. The cold is not yet brutal, but it is insistent. It reminds you that warmth is temporary and must be actively preserved. You tug at your clothing, aware of every thin spot. Wool scratches against your skin, but you're grateful for it. Cotton, you know, holds dampness and loses heat quickly. These lessons were learned on the trail through long, uncomfortable nights. As you stand there in the dimming light, you sense how much knowledge was born from nights like this when theory met freezing ground. You look toward the horizon one last time as the sun disappears completely. The prairie does not glow with city lights. Instead, it sinks into shadow, and the first stars begin to prick through the darkening sky. They feel closer than you are used to, sharper somehow. Without smoke or lamps to blur them, they watch over you with an indifferent clarity. You realize that this sky will be your ceiling tonight, unless you choose to crawl beneath a wagon. There is a quiet moment, brief but noticeable, when the day fully lets go. In that moment, you feel suspended between effort and rest. Your body wants to lie down, but your circumstances demand preparation. You sense that sleep here is not an escape from the world, but a state within it. You will remain part of the landscape even while resting, subject to its sounds, its cold, and its uncertainties. As night settles in, you understand that learning to sleep on the Oregon Trail began not when eyes closed, but here at dusk. It began with recognizing the power of night and adjusting yourself to it. You take a slow breath, the air already cool in your lungs, and step forward into the work of evening, knowing that how you meet this night will shape how you wake in the morning. You move with purpose now, because choosing where to sleep is not a casual decision. The land may look uniform at first glance, but you quickly learn that small differences matter greatly once night tightens its grip. As the last traces of daylight drain away, you scan the ground the way experienced emigrants learn to do with attention shaped by cold nights already endured. You're not searching for comfort in the modern sense. You're searching for the least bad option. Your eyes follow the subtle slopes of the earth. Low ground is tempting because it looks sheltered, but you sense the invisible danger there. Cold air sinks and moisture gathers. A hollow that feels calm at dusk can become a bowl of freezing air by midnight. You learn to favour slightly raised ground just enough to let cold drift past instead of settling around you. This knowledge did not come from guidebooks alone. It came from waking with numb limbs, ice on blankets, and breath fogging the dark. You notice how water shapes every decision. Camps are usually made near rivers, creeks, or springs, because animals and people alike depend on them. Yet sleeping too close to water invites dampness, fog, and biting cold. You learn to measure distance carefully, close enough for convenience, far enough to stay dry. In freezing weather, even a little moisture can steal warmth all night long. Wind becomes another silent factor. You feel it shift as the sun goes down, sometimes strengthening as temperatures drop. A gentle breeze during the day can turn sharp and persistent after dark. You watch how grass bends, how dust moves across the ground. You take note of natural windbreaks like low hills, stands of trees, or the wagons themselves. The wrong exposure can leave you shivering no matter how many blankets you pile on. Around you, others are making the same calculations, some confidently, others hesitantly. Those new to the trail often defer to voices that carry authority earned through experience. A man who has crossed the plains before points to a spot and shakes his head. A woman who has spent weeks nursing children through cold nights quietly adjusts where bedding will go. These choices are rarely debated for long. There is an unspoken understanding that daylight is slipping away. You feel the pressure of time. Darkness makes every task slower and more difficult. Fingers stiffen, shadows blur details. Choosing ground quickly but wisely becomes part of survival. You sense that this urgency would have felt sharper in the 19th century before lanterns were common or plentiful. Firelight helps, but it reaches only so far and fuel is precious. As you walk a few steps testing the ground beneath your boots, you notice its firmness. Soft earth can be comfortable to lie on, but it also holds cold and damp. Hard ground feels unwelcoming, yet it can be drier. In freezing conditions, dryness often matters more than softness. You imagine pioneers learning this lesson painfully night after night, trading comfort for the chance to stay warmer. You also become aware of what lies beneath the surface. Prairie soil can hide rocks, roots, and uneven patches that press into your body once you lie down. You learn to read the ground visually, looking for subtle signs. A slight rise here, a smoother patch there. These small adjustments can mean the difference between restless sleep and utter misery. The presence of animals further shapes the choice of ground. Oxen and horses need space to bed down, and their movements during the night can disturb human sleep. You learn to place yourself where hooves are less likely to wander, but close enough that animals remain within sight and sound. Livestock represent wealth, and survival. Losing one during the night could be devastating. This concern hums quietly beneath every decision. You feel how the camp begins to take shape as these choices are made. Wagons are positioned not randomly but with intention. They form loose circles or arcs, offering some protection from wind and creating a shared centre where fires will burn. Your sleeping place exists within this larger pattern connected to everyone else's safety and comfort. As the sky darkens further, you notice how colours fade from the land. Browns and greens flatten into shades of grey. Depth becomes harder to judge. This is why experienced travellers push to decide early. Once full darkness falls, the land reveals less of itself, and mistakes become easier to make. You feel gratitude for the remaining light, thin though it is. You imagine the mental weight of this decision for emigrants travelling with children or elderly relatives. Choosing poorly could mean a night of relentless cold for those least able to endure it. You sense how responsibility pressed heavily on parents and caretakers, shaping where they stopped and how they arranged their camp. Sleep on the trail was never an individual matter. It was communal, tied to shared risk. Finally you settle on a spot. It is not perfect, but it feels acceptable. The ground slopes just enough. The wind seems partially blocked. You can see the wagons nearby, their dark shapes already looming larger as night deepens. You pause for a moment, standing still, letting your body register the place where it will soon lie down. In that pause you understand something essential about sleeping on the Oregon Trail. It began long before blankets were spread or eyes closed. It began with reading the land and accepting its limits. You were not choosing comfort. You were choosing how much hardship you could reduce. With that understanding, you turn toward the next task, knowing the ground beneath your feet will hold you through the long cold hours ahead. Once the ground is chosen, there is no lingering. The cold grows more assertive as darkness settles in, and you feel it urging your hands to move. The wagon that carried your world across miles of dust and ruts now becomes something else entirely. It must be unloaded, reorganized, and partially dismantled to make night survivable. This work happens in near silence, broken only by brief instructions and the soft thud of items meeting the earth. You begin with the heavy things. Chests are lowered carefully, their wooden sides stiff and cold to the touch. Inside them are blankets, spare clothing, and tools, each one suddenly urgent. What was weight during the day becomes warmth at night. You realize how every item carried on the trail had to justify itself twice, once for travel and once for rest. Anything unnecessary was a burden. Anything essential might mean the difference between sleep and shivering wakefulness. As you lift and carry your breath, fogs in front of you. The warmth from walking all day is already fading, replaced by a creeping chill that settles into your shoulders and lower back. You work quickly, not just from habit, but because stopping invites cold to sink deeper. This is a pattern you will come to know well. Motion preserves heat. Stillness costs it. You notice how people prioritize what comes off the wagon first. Bedding is pulled out early, even before cooking gear in some cases. Supper can wait a little, but warmth cannot. Buffalo robes, thick wool blankets, and patched quilts are shaken out their weight, reassuring. These textiles carry the smells of smoke animals and long use. They're not clean in the modern sense, but they are precious. You feel how awkward some items are to handle in the cold. Leather stiffens. Wood feels sharper against your palms. Fingers lose sensitivity, making knots harder to untie and buckles harder to manage. You imagine emigrants fumbling in near darkness, learning to do everything by feel. Over time, hands remembered the shapes of objects even when eyes could not see clearly. The wagon itself offers limited shelter, but only if it is prepared correctly. Tarps and canvas covers are adjusted to block wind without trapping too much moisture. You learn that sealing everything tightly can backfire, allowing condensation to form inside and dampen bedding. Balance is essential. A little airflow keeps things drier even if it lets in cold air. This trade-off defines much of trail life. You become aware of how space inside the wagon shrinks once supplies are removed. What looked roomy during the day becomes cramped when people consider sleeping there. Not everyone fits comfortably, and many prefer the ground despite its hardness. The wagon bed is often reserved for the sick, the very young, or those most vulnerable to cold. This decision too is made quietly, shaped by care and necessity. Around you the camp hums with restrained activity. Fires begin to spark to life, casting flickering light across faces and hands. The glow reveals expressions of concentration rather than ease. Unloading is not social time. It is practical, almost ritualistic, a series of actions repeated night after night until muscle memory takes over. You sense how this repetition helped people cope, turning uncertainty into routine. You think about how the weight of the wagon changes with each item removed. During the day, its mass presses into the earth. At night, it feels lighter, almost skeletal. This transformation mirrors the travellers themselves, burdened by miles in daylight, stripped down to essentials by night. Sleep on the trail is not indulgence. It is recovery, just enough to face the next day. As you lay items near your chosen spot, you arrange them carefully. Blankets go on top of ground cloths. Spare clothing is kept close, ready to be layered if the cold worsens. Boots are placed within reach, not kicked off carelessly. You learn quickly that fumbling for footwear in the dark with numb feet is an experience to avoid. Everything has its place, even in this temporary home. You also notice what stays in the wagon. Food supplies are secured against animals. Tools are stowed to prevent accidents in the dark. Nothing is left out thoughtlessly. A misplaced axe or knife could cause injury when visibility is low and fatigue is high. These small precautions become second nature, learned through stories of accidents passed quietly from one traveller to another. The act of unloading carries a mental shift. As the last chest is set down, you feel the day finally release its hold. The road behind you fades, replaced by the immediate reality of night. There is a strange comfort in this focus. Exhaustion narrows your world to what must be done now, leaving little room for worry about miles ahead. You pause briefly, straightening your back, and feel the cold settle again. The ground beneath your boots radiates chill upward. The sky above is now fully dark stars, bright and unblinking. You understand that everything you'll need to stay warm through the night must already be here in your hands or within arm's reach. There will be no returning to the wagon easily once you settle in. With the wagon stripped and the essentials laid out, you take a breath and prepare for the next task. The cold air fills your lungs sharp but steady. You are learning moment by moment what it meant to live within these limits. Unloading the wagon is not just labour. It is the first true step towards sleep, shaped by cold darkness and hard-earned knowledge. As the last wagon settles into place, you begin to notice the larger shape of the camp forming around you. What looked like a loose scattering of vehicles moments ago slowly becomes something intentional, almost architectural. This arrangement is not accidental. It reflects habits learned across thousands of miles and passed from one group to another. A mainstream historical fact is that most trail camps followed similar patterns, even among parties who had never travelled together before. Shared necessity created shared design. You watch as wagons angle inward, their tongues pointing toward a rough centre. Some form a near circle, others create an open arc depending on terrain and numbers. The goal is not perfection, but function. The wagons break the windmark boundaries and create a sense of enclosure where none naturally exists. You feel how this shape changes your perception of space. The prairie beyond the wagons fades into darkness while the centre feels almost intimate. Fire pits appear in that central space. Small, careful fires, never large or wasteful. Wood is scarce on much of the trail, and dried buffalo chips often substitute where trees are absent. A quirky tidbit found in emigrant journals mentions how newcomers sometimes recoiled at the smell of burning dung, only to later feel comforted by it. Familiarity reshapes what feels strange. Warmth and light quickly outweigh aesthetic concerns. You sense how the wagon circle offers psychological shelter as much as physical protection. Even though historians still argue whether wagons truly form defensive forts against attack, there is little doubt they made people feel safer at night. The boundary they created helped calm minds already strained by fatigue and uncertainty. Inside the circle, voices soften. Outside it, the land feels more distant, more unknown. As you stand within this space, you notice how everyone has a role. Some tend fires, others check animals. A few move quietly between wagons, ensuring children are settled or the sick are comfortable. There is no formal assignment of duties, yet order emerges. Scholars still debate how much of this organisation was planned versus instinctive, but it clearly worked often enough to become tradition. The centre of camp becomes the heart of evening life. Cooking happens there, conversations gather there, decisions are made there. Yet even this shared space is subdued. The cold encourages closeness, but also restraint. People conserve energy aware that every movement costs warmth. You feel this economy of motion shaping behaviour, turning even simple gestures into deliberate acts. You become aware of how light behaves here. Firelight flickers against canvas and wood, throwing long shadows that stretch and sway. Faces glow briefly, then disappear back into darkness. This shifting illumination contributes to the dreamlike quality of evening on the trail. It blurs edges and softens features, making the camp feel both real and unreal at the same time. The wagons themselves take on new identities. By day they are tools of movement. By night they are walls, cupboards, and sometimes beds. Their wooden sides block wind. Their undercarriages provide shelter. You sense the intimacy people developed with these vehicles, learning every creak and joint. Diaries often mention how a familiar wagon sound at night could be reassuring proof that things were as they should be. You also notice the gaps in the circle. No camp is completely sealed. There are always openings, pathways for animals, people, and the wind. These gaps remind you that safety here is relative. The arrangement reduces exposure, but it does not eliminate risk. This awareness keeps a quiet tension alive beneath the calm surface of camp life. As darkness deepens, the prairie beyond the wagons becomes nearly invisible. Stars overhead feel sharper, more numerous. Without buildings or trees to frame your view, the sky seems to press closer. You understand why many emigrants wrote about the night sky with awe. It was one of the few comforts that required nothing but looking up. Within the wagon circle, the ground becomes shared territory. There are no private rooms, no personal boundaries as you would know them today. Sleep happens within sight and sound of others. Coughs, whispers, and the shifting of blankets travel easily through the camp. For some, this closeness is comforting. For others, it is a challenge. Scholars remain divided on whether communal sleeping eased loneliness or intensified it, but it undeniably shaped the nightly experience. You feel how this arrangement influences sleep itself. Knowing others are near allows you to relax slightly. At the same time, you remain aware of every sound. The mind does not fully let go. Sleep on the trail exists somewhere between rest and watchfulness, shaped by shared vulnerability. As fires settle into glowing embers, the wagon circle becomes quieter. Movement slows. The shape holds steady and familiar now. You realize that this simple configuration carried more than people and supplies. It carried habits, expectations, and a sense of order that made the unknown feel manageable. Standing there, you feel the quiet power of this arrangement. It is not grand or elaborate. It is practical, shaped by repetition and necessity. Yet it defines the night-giving structure to darkness and a measure of peace to those within it. You take one last look around the circle, committing its shape to memory before turning inward toward your own small place in the shared night. As the camp settles into its familiar shape, your attention turns inward toward your own body and what you're wearing. Clothing here is no longer about appearance or modesty. It is a tool as vital as fire or shelter. You become acutely aware of every layer against your skin, every seam and fold, because each one plays a role in how the night will treat you. A mainstream historical fact is that most emigrants owned very few garments, often wearing the same clothes for days or weeks at a time. What mattered was not variety, but function. You begin by assessing what you already have on. Wool dominates for good reason. It holds warmth even when damp, a property that saved countless travellers from worse suffering. Shirts itch, trousers feel heavy, socks are thick and uneven from repeated mending. Comfort is secondary to survival. Cotton, though common, is less forgiving. Once wet with sweat or moisture from the air, it chills quickly. Many learn this lesson the hard way, waking in the night with cold pressed deep into their bones. You add layers slowly, deliberately. Too many too soon can cause sweating, which becomes dangerous once movement stops. This balance between warmth and dryness is delicate. Trail diaries often mention people adjusting clothing multiple times before sleep, responding to shifting temperatures and wind. Some historians still argue whether layering strategies were widely understood before departure or learned gradually through experience, but the outcome was the same. Those who adapted slept better. You think about how little privacy exists here. Changing clothes happens openly or under the partial cover of a wagon. This lack of separation was an adjustment for many, especially women raised with stricter expectations of modesty. Yet necessity reshaped norms. Staying warm took precedence over social convention. Over time, embarrassment faded, replaced by practicality and mutual understanding. Footwear becomes a particular concern. Boots are stiff, often cracked from long miles and exposure. Many people sleep with socks still on, sometimes even with boots loosened but not fully removed. Cold feet can make rest impossible. A quirky tidbit recorded in one emigrant letter describes a woman sleeping with spare socks tucked under her shirt during the day, so they would be warm by night. Such small innovations spread quickly along the trail. You consider head coverings next. Heat escapes easily from the head, and many slept with hats, caps, or scarves still on. For children especially, this could mean the difference between restful sleep and constant waking. Some wrapped their heads in spare cloth. Others used rolled garments as makeshift pillows that doubled as insulation. Every item had to serve more than one purpose. You notice how clothing carries the marks of the journey. Patches overlap patches. Sleeves are shortened, hems let down. Repairs are visible and frequent. Sewing often happened by firelight and the evening hands moving steadily despite fatigue. Scholars still debate how much time women spent mending versus resting, but surviving garments suggest that maintenance was constant and essential. As you settle into your layers, you feel the weight of them pressing gently against you. There is a sense of being cocooned, held together against the cold. At the same time, movement becomes more difficult. Turning over later will require effort. This is a trade-off you accept willingly. Stillness you know will come eventually. You think about children again, how they were dressed and undressed by tired parents, fingers numb and patience thin. Keeping small bodies warm through the night was an ongoing concern. Extra layers were added even if it meant discomfort. Crying children not only lost heat but disturbed others, so warmth became a communal priority. Care extended outward, shaping decisions beyond individual comfort. You also sense how illness complicates everything. Someone with a fever might be layered heavily, while someone with chills might need warmth without trapping sweat. These judgments were made without thermometers, or modern medicine relying instead on touch and observation. Historians still argue whether trail medicine was more intuitive than effective, but clothing was often the first line of defense. As the night deepens, you feel how your body responds to the layers. Warmth gathers slowly. The initial chill fades into a dull background presence. You're not cozy, but you are protected. This distinction matters. Sleep here is about preventing harm, not indulging in softness. You take a moment to notice the quiet rustle of fabric around you. Others are settling to, adjusting sleeves, pulling collars, higher, tucking loose ends. These sounds blend with the crackle of fire and the distant movement of animals. Together they form the soundtrack of night on the trail. You realize that clothing continues to work even after sleep begins. If you wake cold, you will add another layer. If you wake damp, you may remove one despite the chill. The night is a conversation between your body and the environment mediated by wool and cloth. Nothing is fixed, everything is responsive. As you finally still yourself fully dressed and layered against the cold, you understand how central clothing was to the experience of sleeping on the Oregon Trail. It was shelter you carried with you, adaptable and imperfect. Wrapped in these layers, you are as ready as you can be. The ground waits. The night stretches ahead. You draw a slow breath and prepare to lie down, trusting fabric and experience to hold you until morning. With clothing settled and bodies layered against the cold, attention shifts toward fire. Even before full darkness, you feel its absence like a hollow. Fire is not only warmth here, it is reassurance light and a marker of human presence in an immense landscape. A mainstream historical fact is that nearly every trail camp relied on a central fire, no matter how scarce fuel might be. Without it, nights felt longer, colder, and more uncertain. You watch as small piles of fuel are gathered and arranged. In wooded stretches, branches and fallen limbs are used carefully, never wasted. On open plains, dried buffalo chips become the primary source. At first, the idea may seem unpleasant, but necessity strips away hesitation. A quirky tidbit found in several journals notes that buffalo chips burn surprisingly hot and evenly when properly dried. Over time, many emigrants preferred them to green wood that smoked excessively. Lighting the fire requires patience. Sparks must catch coaxed gently rather than forced. Wind can undo careful work in seconds, scattering embers or snuffing flames entirely. You see hands shielding a fragile glow, bodies leaning in close. When the fire finally takes, there is a quiet satisfaction shared by everyone nearby. The first steady flame feels like a small victory over the encroaching cold. You notice how people position themselves around the fire. No one sits directly in front for long, as that space is needed for cooking and tending. Instead, bodies form a loose ring, rotating slowly to warm different sides. This subtle choreography emerges without instruction. Scholars still debate how much of trail behavior was consciously taught versus unconsciously adopted, but the result is efficient and harmonious. The fire's warmth is uneven. Faces flush while backs remain cold. You feel heat on your hands while your legs ache with chill. This contrast is familiar to anyone who has spent time outdoors, and it shapes how you rest. You learn to extend hands toward the flames, then tuck them back into sleeves or pockets to preserve the heat gained. Fire also brings light, and with it a narrowing of focus. Beyond its reach, the camp dissolves into shadow. Within it, details sharpen. You see steam rise from damp clothing. You see tired eyes reflecting orange and gold. The flickering light makes everything feel temporary, as if the camp itself might vanish once the fire dies down. You become aware of how carefully fuel is managed. Fires are kept small-fed slowly. There is no thoughtless tossing of wood. Every piece has been gathered with effort. In some stretches of the trail, people went to bed with fires already dying, choosing to conserve fuel for cooking rather than warmth. Historians still argue whether this practice was common or situational, but accounts of cold nights without fire appear often enough to suggest it was not rare. As the fire settles into a steady burn, cooking begins. Pots are set nearby, not directly over the flames, but close enough to capture heat. The smell of food mixes with smoke, grounding you in the present moment. Even a simple meal feels substantial after a day of travel. The fire becomes the centre of gravity for the camp, drawing people in despite the cold. You notice how fire affects mood as much as temperature. Conversations soften, movements slow. There's a sense of pause, a collective exhale after the strain of the day. This calm does not erase worry, but it makes it manageable. Sitting by the fire, you feel less exposed, less alone beneath the vast sky. You also sense the responsibility tied to fire. Someone must tend it, ensure sparks do not escape, watch for shifts in wind. This duty often rotates or falls to whoever remains awake longest. Fire is comfort, but it is also risk. Wagons, canvas and dry grass can ignite easily. Awareness never fully fades. As time passes, the fire changes character. Flames lower, embers glow, heat becomes gentler, more diffuse. People begin to drift away one by one toward their bedding. You linger, absorbing as much warmth as you can before leaving. You know that once you lie down, the cold will feel sharper. You take a final look into the fire. The embers pulse softly like a slow heartbeat. This sight has soothed travellers for centuries, long before the Oregon Trail existed. Scholars still debate how much comfort people derive from such moments versus how much was simply habit, but the effect is undeniable. Fire steadies the mind, anchoring you in the present. When you finally step away, you feel the cold close in almost immediately. The contrast is stark but expected. You carry the warmth with you as best you can, tucked into your layers and memory. Behind you, the fire continues to glow, a quiet guardian against the night. Ahead, your bedding waits. You move carefully, deliberately, knowing that the fire's work is not finished. Its warmth will linger in you, helping you face the long hours of sleep on frozen ground. When the fire settles into a steady rhythm, attention turns to supper. Hunger has been riding quietly alongside you all day, kept at bay by movement and focus. Now in the cold evening air it rises to the surface. Cooking on the trail is slow and deliberate, shaped by limited supplies and numbed fingers. You feel the chill most sharply now, standing still, while waiting for food hands hovering near warmth, but never quite comfortable. Meals at night are rarely elaborate. Time, fuel and energy are all in short supply, yet even simple food carries weight here. A pot of beans, a pan of bacon, a strip of dried meat warmed just enough to soften. These are not just calories, they are reassurance. Many emigrants wrote that a hot meal at night did more for morale than any speech or promise of progress. The body listens closely to warmth after a cold day. You notice how cooking is arranged around the fire, not over it. Flames are unpredictable, and burning food wastes precious supplies. Pots are set to the side where heat is steady. Someone stirs slowly, careful not to spill. Spilled food means wasted effort and less to share. This awareness shapes every movement, turning cooking into a practiced dance rather than casual preparation. The cold complicates everything. Grease thickens, water takes longer to boil, hands lose feeling, making it harder to judge temperature or grip utensils. You feel impatience tug at you, but you also sense restraint. Rushing leads to mistakes, and mistakes are costly. Over time, trail travelers learn to slow down in the evening, even when hunger pressed hard. You become aware of how meals are shared. Families cluster together, but food often moves between groups. Someone has extra flour, someone else has coffee. Barter happens quietly without ceremony. These exchanges build relationships and ease tension. Food becomes a social glue, holding the camp together through mutual dependence. Children are fed first whenever possible. Their hunger is sharper, their tolerance for cold lower. You watch small hands wrapped around tin cups, steam rising toward flushed faces. These moments of warmth are fleeting but precious. Parents linger nearby, adjusting collars, blowing on food to cool it. Night magnifies concern, making every cough or shiver feel significant. You notice how little people speak while eating. Fatigue settles in deeply now. The day's miles weigh on shoulders and backs. Chewing becomes slow and methodical. The crackle of fire and the scrape of spoons replace conversation. This quiet is not awkward. It is shared, born of mutual understanding. Some evenings bring disappointment. Food runs short. Rations are thin. In these moments, the cold feels sharper, more personal. A small portion leaves the stomach unsatisfied, and the body struggles to generate warmth. Letters written later often mention these nights when hunger and cold intertwined, making sleep restless and shallow. The memory of such evenings lingered long after the journey ended. You also sense the comfort of routine. Supper marks a clear transition from day to night. No matter how difficult the travel, this pause remains. It signals that rest is approaching, however imperfect. Even when storms threaten or supplies dwindle, the act of cooking anchors the evening, giving shape to time. As bowls empty and pots are scraped clean, attention turns again to the fire. Remaining heat is used carefully. Some save embers to relight flames in the morning. Others let the fire die down, slowly conserving fuel. You feel the subtle calculation behind these choices, shaped by distance to the next stop and memory of past shortages. The cold deepens as the fire wanes. Without the distraction of eating, you feel it seep into your legs and spine. You shift your weight, stamping feet lightly, trying to preserve warmth without expending too much energy. This balance becomes second nature over time. You learn to read your body signals closely. When the last bites are finished, dishes are cleaned quickly or set aside to be dealt with at first light. Water is precious, and washing is often minimal. Hygiene takes a different shape here, shaped by necessity rather than preference. This too affects sleep. Sticky hands, lingering smells, and grit are accepted as part of the experience. As you step away from the fire, stomach warmer but not full, you feel a subtle easing. Hunger no longer distracts you. The body is calmer, more willing to rest. You know the night ahead will still be cold and interrupted, but supper has given you a small reserve to draw from. You move toward your bedding with a measured pace, careful not to spill what warmth you've gained. Behind you, the fire glows faintly, its role for the evening nearly complete. Ahead, the ground waits hard and unyielding. You take a slow breath, steadying yourself. Supper is done. Now comes the work of sleeping through the cold. As supper fades into memory, the camp grows quieter and the night begins to speak more clearly. Without the movement of cooking or the low murmur of shared meals, sounds stretch outward and become more distinct. You notice them one by one, as if your senses are adjusting to a new layer of awareness. Sleeping on the Oregon Trail means never being fully alone with silence. Instead, you are surrounded by a living soundscape that continues long after eyes close. The wind is the first presence you register. It moves across the prairie with little resistance, brushing through grass and canvas alike. Sometimes it sighs gently. Sometimes it presses harder, tugging at wagon covers and whispering through seams. You feel it against your face, cool and persistent. Even when it is not strong enough to steal warmth outright, it reminds you how exposed you are. There are no walls here, only fabric and resolve. You hear the wagons themselves settling. Wood contracts as temperatures drop, releasing small pops and groans. These sounds are familiar now, but they still carry meaning. A sudden crack can startle you, making your body tense before your mind catches up. Over time, you learn the difference between ordinary shifting and something that demands attention. This awareness follows you into sleep, keeping part of you lightly alert. Animals contribute their own rhythms to the night. Oxen snort softly. Horses shift their weight, leather tack creaking in response. Occasionally a hoof scrapes against frozen ground. These sounds are reassuring in their consistency. They signal that the animals are still there, still breathing, still part of the shared effort to survive the journey. A sudden absence of sound can be more unsettling than noise itself. Farther out beyond the ring of wagons, the prairie has its own voice. Coyotes call to one another, their cries rising and falling in eerie patterns. Wolves may answer in deeper tones. These sounds travel far in cold air, seeming closer than they are. For those new to the trail, such calls can tighten the chest with fear. For others, they become part of the night's fabric, a reminder that the land is alive and indifferent. Insects fewer now as temperatures drop still make themselves known. a persistent buzz near your ear, the faint rustle of something moving through dry grass. These small interruptions can feel magnified when you're tired and trying to rest. You learn to let them pass to resist the urge to swat or shift too much. Movement costs warmth, and warmth is precious. You also hear people even when they are trying to be quiet. A cough breaks the stillness. Someone clears their throat. A child murmurs in sleep. These human sounds weave through the night, creating a sense of shared presence. You are not alone with your discomfort. Others are awake too, turning over, adjusting blankets, listening just as you are. Fire, though, diminished, still speaks. Embers crack softly as they settle. Occasionally a log shifts, releasing a brief flare of light and sound. This gentle activity is comforting, a reminder that warmth has not vanished entirely. Many travellers wrote later that falling asleep to the sound of embers was one of the few consistent comforts of the trail. The sky above contributes its own quiet. Without clouds or city noise, the night feels vast. Sometimes you hear nothing at all for long stretches, and this absence can feel heavy. Your own breathing becomes loud in your ears. You notice its rhythm, the slight hitch when cold air enters your lungs. Frost may form on blankets, with each exhale a faint crackle barely audible. You become aware of how sound travels differently at night. Distances blur. A noise far away can sound close, while something nearby can seem muted. This uncertainty keeps part of your mind engaged. You are resting but not fully surrendered to sleep. This state becomes familiar over weeks on the trail, a compromise between vigilance and exhaustion. Some nights bring unexpected sounds, a sudden shout as someone stumbles in the dark, the sharp snap of a rope giving way. These moments jolt you awake, heart racing. Even when they pass quickly, they leave an echo in your body, making it harder to relax again. The night teaches you that rest is fragile and easily broken. You think about how people in settled homes experience night differently. Walls muffle sound. Familiar creaks are interpreted easily. Here, every noise carries possibility. This heightened awareness shapes dreams and sleep patterns. Many accounts describe shallow sleep filled with half dreams and frequent waking. Deep, uninterrupted rest is rare, yet there is also beauty in the sounds. The wind moving through grass like water, the distant call of animals under a sky full of stars, the soft breathing of those around you. These elements connect you to the world beyond your discomfort. They remind you that you are part of something larger even in hardship. As you lie still listening, you begin to sort sounds into categories, familiar and unfamiliar, harmless and concerning. Over time, this sorting becomes automatic. The mind adapts, learning what can be ignored and what deserves attention. This adaptation makes sleep possible, if not entirely peaceful. You feel your body gradually settle. Muscles release their tight hold. Breath slows. The cold remains, but it becomes a steady companion rather than a sharp intruder. Sounds continue around you, but they soften at the edges of awareness. You drift between listening and dreaming, never fully disconnected from the night. In this way, sleep on the Oregon Trail unfolds. It is not an escape from sound, but an accommodation of it. You rest within a living landscape, ears, open senses tuned, trusting that familiarity will carry you through until morning. As the night deepens, the sounds blend together and you let them rock you, gently guiding you toward whatever rest the cold will allow. The fire has burned down to a low glow, and people draw closer together without quite meaning to. In this softer light, voices drop and conversations take on a different shape. These are not the lively exchanges of midday traded while walking or guiding animals. They are quieter, more deliberate, shaped by fatigue and the awareness that night is settling fully around you. You find yourself listening more than speaking, absorbing the rhythm of shared reflection. Stories emerge almost naturally at this hour. Someone mentions a landmark passed earlier in the day. Another recalls a river crossing from weeks ago. These recollections serve a purpose beyond passing time. They anchor the group in continuity, reminding everyone that difficult moments have been faced before and survived. Many trail diaries describe evenings like this as essential for morale, even when food was scarce and sleep uncertain. You notice how stories are told differently here. There is little embellishment. Voices remain calm, almost restrained. Laughter, when it comes, is brief and soft. No one wants to waste energy or draw attention beyond the circle of light. Instead, stories flow gently like a slow stream, carrying bits of humour, warning and memory without urgency. Children listen with wide eyes until sleep claims them. Adults speak with an awareness of those small ears, choosing words carefully. Tales of danger are softened. Hardship is acknowledged but not dramatised. This careful balance is instinctive. It protects the young while still allowing truth to be shared. You sense how storytelling becomes a form of care. Some stories focus on the land itself, a hill that looked gentle but proved steep, a stretch of road that seemed endless. These accounts serve as informal maps passing along knowledge that might ease future days. Researchers who study trail narratives often note how oral sharing complemented written guidebooks, filling gaps with lived experience. Here by firelight, that exchange feels immediate and personal. You also hear stories of home, towns left behind, gardens, rivers, and familiar rooms. These memories surface more easily at night when movement stops and longing has space to breathe. Voices soften further when these subjects arise. For some, speaking of home brings comfort. For others, it sharpens the ache of distance. You feel both possibilities hovering in the air. Faith enters these conversations quietly. Someone recalls a sermon. Another repeats a line of scripture remembered from childhood. These words are not preached. They are offered gently like a shared blanket. In the uncertain stillness of night, belief provides a structure when the future feels unclear. Accounts from the period often mention prayer at evening fires, sometimes spoken aloud, sometimes kept private. You notice how people position themselves while talking. Bodies angle toward warmth and light. Hands are wrapped in sleeves or clasped together. Eyes reflect the embers, giving faces a softened glow. This physical closeness fosters emotional openness even among those who might have remained distant during the day. Night has a way of drawing people inward. There is also silence between stories, and it is not uncomfortable. It allows thoughts to settle. It gives space for the fire to speak again, for the wind to remind you of the world beyond the circle. These pauses are as important as the words themselves. They give the mind room to rest before sleep. Occasionally someone shares a cautionary tale, a wagon lost in a storm, an illness that spread quickly. These stories are not meant to frighten, but to educate. They carry lessons about preparedness and humility. You sense how such warnings are received respectfully, stored away for later reflection rather than immediate anxiety. As the evening deepens, voices fade one by one. Fatigue claims even the most willing storyteller. Eyelids droop, words trail off mid-sentence. This gradual quieting feels natural, like the tide pulling back. No one announces the end of conversation. It simply dissolves, replaced by the softer sounds of settling bodies. You feel a sense of connection lingering as people drift away. Even brief exchanges have reinforced the shared nature of this journey. Sleeping on the trail is not a solitary act, even when you lie down alone. The stories you heard stay with you, weaving into your thoughts as you prepare to rest. You think about how these moments would have been remembered later. In letters written years afterward, many emigrants recalled evening conversations more vividly than miles travelled. Perhaps because these were moments when the journey felt human rather than logistical. Here by firelight, identity and purpose were reaffirmed. As you rise to leave the circle, you carry the warmth of words with you alongside the physical warmth you have gathered. The fire behind you dims further, its role nearly complete. Ahead, your bedding waits in shadow. You move carefully, quietly aware that others are already sleeping, Lying down later, you will find that fragments of these stories surface in your half-dreams. A remembered laugh, a familiar place described softly, a warning that echoes briefly before fading. These impressions blend with the sounds of night shaping the texture of your rest. In this way, storytelling becomes part of sleep itself. It eases the transition from wakefulness to rest, offering reassurance without demanding attention. You close your eyes knowing that others nearby carry similar thoughts, drifting together into the uncertain comfort of the night. The firelight fades from memory, but the sense of shared experience remains steady and calming as you settle into the long hours ahead. When the conversations fade and the fire dims, you turn fully toward the task of bedding down. This moment carries its own quiet weight. Lying down on the Oregon Trail is not something done casually. It is deliberate, careful, and shaped by trial and error. You approach the ground with awareness, knowing that the earth beneath you will shape every hour of the night ahead. You begin by clearing the spot as best you can. Stones are kicked aside, sharp twigs are snapped or moved, even small protrusions can become unbearable after hours of stillness. In daylight, the ground looked forgiving enough. Now in the dark, it reveals its hardness. You crouch and feel it with your hands, cold, seeping instantly into your palms. This touch reminds you that the ground is not neutral. It pulls heat away relentlessly. A cloth goes down first if one is available. Sometimes it is canvas, sometimes an old blanket too worn for warmth, but still useful as a barrier. This layer matters more than softness. It keeps moisture from rising into bedding and slows the steady drain of warmth into the soil. Without it, cold creeps upward all night, impossible to ignore. Blankets follow, spread with care. You shake them gently, releasing dust and stiff folds. Their weight is familiar now, comforting in its predictability. Buffalo robes, if you are fortunate enough to have one, are laid on top or beneath their thick hides, offering superior insulation. These robes carry a particular smell, earthy and animal, but they are prized beyond aesthetics. Their warmth is unmatched. You think about how people learn these arrangements through experience. Early nights often ended in discomfort, with too few layers beneath and too many above. Over time, travelers realized that insulation below mattered just as much as what covered the body. This understanding reshaped how bedding was arranged night after night until it became instinctive. Pillows are improvised. A rolled coat, a sack of clothing, sometimes nothing at all. The head is supported just enough to prevent strain, but comfort remains secondary. You position yourself, carefully choosing how to lie. On your side, knees drawn up slightly to conserve warmth. On your back, arms tucked close. Each position has consequences, and you know you will likely shift more than once before sleep takes hold. As you lower yourself down, the cold greets you immediately. It presses through layers firm and unyielding. You resist the urge to tense. Tension wastes energy and warmth. Instead, you settle slowly, allowing body heat to begin its gradual work. This takes patience. Warmth does not arrive all at once. It builds in pockets, spreading outward if you remain still. Around you, others are doing the same. You hear the soft rustle of fabric, the quiet grunt as someone adjusts their position. These sounds are subdued, respectful. Everyone understands that rest is fragile and easily disturbed. Even children worn down by the day grow quieter once laid down. You keep your boots close. Sometimes they are placed under blankets to prevent them from freezing stiff. Nothing is left far away. If you need to rise quickly, fumbling in the dark with numb fingers can turn a small problem into a serious one. These habits form quickly reinforced by memory of past discomfort. The ground beneath you feels unyielding, but you begin to adapt. Your body finds ways to soften against it, redistributing weight-easing pressure. This adaptation does not make the ground kind, but it makes it tolerable. Sleep here is an agreement, not a surrender. You meet the earth halfway. You become aware of how stillness changes the cold. At first it feels sharp, insistent. Over time it dulls, settling into a steady presence. This is not warmth, but it is manageable. You pull blankets closer around your shoulders, tucking edges under your body to trap heat. Small adjustments make meaningful differences. Your breath slows. The world narrows to sensation. Fabric against skin. Cold pressing from below. The faint glow of embers just visible through half-closed eyes. You focus on these details, letting them anchor you. Thoughts of distance and danger recede, replaced by immediate physical awareness. Sleep does not come quickly. It drifts closer in stages. You hover in a space between waking and rest, alert to sounds, yet too tired to react strongly. This liminal state becomes familiar on the trail. It is where most rest occurs, shallow but restorative enough to continue. As your body finally begins to loosen, you accept the limits of this rest. It will not be deep or luxurious. It will be interrupted, yet it is enough. Enough to heal muscles strained by the day. Enough to quiet the mind for a few hours. Enough to rise again when dawn comes. Wrapped in blankets pressed against cold ground, you let your eyes close fully. The earth holds you firm and indifferent. Above you the sky stretches endlessly. Between them you rest, suspended in the simple act of enduring the night. Once you're settled on the ground, another decision lingers in the background, one that many on the trail weighed carefully each night. Whether to sleep fully outside or to tuck yourself beneath a wagon. Neither choice offers true comfort. Each carries its own kind of protection and its own quiet discomforts. As you lie there, you feel the presence of the wagon nearby, its dark bulk, offering an alternative shelter just a few steps away. Sleeping beneath a wagon promises a measure of cover. The wooden bed above blocks wind and falling frost. Canvas sides, if lowered, create a partial barrier against drifting snow or unexpected rain. You imagine the appeal this held for those already worn thin by cold nights. Crawling under the wagon feels like slipping into a cave enclosed and defined in a landscape that otherwise feels boundless. But the space beneath a wagon is narrow and unforgiving. Axles and wheels limit where you can stretch. The ground there is often harder packed by repeated use. Dust and debris collect beneath wagons during the day, and at night that grit presses into your bedding. You have to arrange yourself, carefully mindful not to bump metal or wood that could shift or creak loudly in the stillness. The air under the wagon feels different too. It is stiller, sometimes damp. Breath can linger there and moisture gathers more easily. On especially cold nights, this trapped air can feel heavier, carrying chill that refuses to disperse. Those who slept there often woke with blankets stiff from frost, the cold locked in close. Sleeping out in the open offers its own advantages. The air moves freely, carrying away moisture and breath. You can stretch more easily, turn without striking wood or iron. Many preferred this freedom, even knowing the wind would touch them more directly. Over time, some found that a steady breeze felt better than stagnant cold. Yet openness brings vulnerability. Without the wagon above, frost can settle directly on blankets. Snow, even light flurries, dusts bedding by morning. You feel more exposed beneath the vast sky, aware of how little separates you from the elements. Every sound seems closer, sharper. The land presses in from all sides. You think about how families made this choice. Children were often placed under wagons for added protection, especially in harsh weather. The sick and elderly, too, were given priority for sheltered spaces. This meant that able-bodied adults frequently chose the open ground, accepting discomfort so others might fare better. These decisions happened quietly, shaped by care rather than instruction. As you lie there, you imagine the small negotiations that took place night after night. Someone offering their spot, someone insisting they were fine outside. These exchanges reveal much about trail life. Survival depended not just on strength, but on cooperation and restraint. The wagon itself is never completely still. As temperatures drop, wood contracts. Wheels shift slightly. Harnesses creak faintly. Sleeping beneath means becoming attuned to these movements. At first they may startle you awake. Over time they become familiar, almost comforting. They signal continuity that nothing has gone wrong. Those who sleep inside the wagon bed experience yet another variation. The surface is flat but narrow. Movement is restricted. Turning requires care, especially if others share the space. The canvas cover muffles some sounds while amplifying others. Rain on canvas can be soothing or relentless, depending on its intensity. Cold seeps in, regardless, finding its way through every seam. You reflect on how these sleeping arrangements shaped relationships. Privacy was scarce. Boundaries were negotiated nightly. People learned to coexist in close quarters, to ignore small disturbances, to forgive unintentional kicks or rustling blankets. Patience became a necessity, not a virtue. As the night deepens, you sense how your body responds differently depending on where you lie. Under the wagon you feel boxed in but shielded. Outside you feel exposed but freer. Neither option grants true rest. Instead, each offers a different balance of discomfort and protection. You adjust your blankets again, tucking them tightly around your shoulders. Cold air slides along the ground, searching for gaps. You press fabric closer, aware of how even a small opening can undo your efforts. This vigilance persists even as sleep approaches. Part of you remains alert, guarding warmth. Around you the camp settles further. Occasional movements ripple through the night as others adjust their own positions. A wagon shifts slightly. An animal snorts. These sounds blend into a steady backdrop, neither alarming nor fully ignorable. You think about how over weeks and months people learned which option suited them best. Some always chose the wagon. Others preferred open ground no matter the weather. Experience shaped preference, and preference shaped endurance. There was no universal solution, only adaptation. As your breathing slows, the question of shelter fades. The choice has been made for tonight, and there is no changing it now. The cold remains steady and patient. You feel your body surrender just enough to allow rest without fully letting go. Sleep arrives in fragments. Short stretches of unconsciousness broken by waking moments. In each pause you register where you are beneath wood or under stars, then drift again. This rhythm becomes familiar, a pattern shaped by necessity rather than design. In the end, you realize that where you slept mattered less than how you endured it. Wagon or ground shelter or openness, the night demanded the same resilience. Wrapped in blankets, surrounded by the quiet presence of others, you rest as best you can, held between earth and sky, waiting for the pale promise of dawn. Sometime after midnight, the cold changes character. It no longer feels like an edge pressing against you from outside. It feels embedded, settled into the ground, the air, and your own bones. You wake without fully knowing why, drifting up from shallow sleep into awareness. Your breath hangs thick and pale in front of your face, and for a moment you lie very still, taking inventory of your body. Your toes ache first, then your fingers. These small extremities lose warmth fastest, even when wrapped carefully. You wiggle them gently, testing sensation. Too much movement will cost heat, but none at all allows stiffness to deepen. You learn this balance through long practice, adjusting in small deliberate ways. The world feels quieter now. The fire has collapsed into embers. Most voices are gone. Even the animals seem subdued, conserving energy. Sound travels farther in this stillness, but there is less of it to carry. The night feels heavier, pressing down rather than stretching outward. You pull your blankets tighter, tucking edges beneath your body. This motion takes effort. Fabric resists with a frozen stiffness, and your muscles protest as they shift. Once settled again, you wait for warmth to return, knowing it will be slow. Heat must be rebuilt from within, a patient process. Cold works differently at this hour. Earlier it was something you could push back against. Now it feels relentless, as if it has claimed the night and will not loosen its grip until morning. Many who travelled the trail wrote that the hours before dawn were the hardest. Exhaustion deepens while warmth fades and the promise of sunrise still feels distant. You become aware of how your breathing changes. Each inhale draws in air that feels sharper, drier. Your chest tightens slightly in response. You slow your breath, making it shallower, trying to warm the air before it reaches your lungs. This becomes another small skill learned through repetition. Somewhere nearby, someone coughs. The sound is rough and persistent, cutting through the quiet. Illness often made itself known at night when cold amplified every weakness. You listen briefly, then let the sound fade into the background, unable to help and unwilling to dwell on it. Frost forms quietly. You can feel it rather than hear it, a faint crunch when you shift your blanket. Moisture from breath settles and hardens. By morning, many will wake to find their bedding edged with ice, evidence of how cold the night truly was. This is expected now, almost routine. You try to sink back into sleep, but your mind resists. The cold keeps it alert, scanning for discomfort. Thoughts drift in and out unstructured. Memories of the day replay briefly, then dissolve. The body rests in fragments, never fully surrendering. You shift positions, slightly curling tighter. This posture conserves heat, drawing arms and legs inward. It is instinctive, almost animal. You feel your spine relax as you settle muscles, releasing what tension they can afford to let go. Time becomes difficult to judge. Without clocks or light, the night stretches unevenly. Minutes feel long, hours blur together. You gauge progress by sensation rather than measure. The cold feels deepest now, so you assume dawn is still far away. Despite discomfort, you notice moments of calm. A pocket of warmth forms near your chest. Your breath steadies. For a while, the cold recedes enough to allow a deeper drift. These moments are brief, but valuable. They restore just enough energy to continue. You think about how repeated nights like this shaped people. Endurance was not dramatic. It was built quietly through nights endured rather than conquered. Each freezing hour passed became part of a growing reserve of experience. As you hover between sleep and waking, you accept the cold as a constant companion rather than an enemy. Fighting it only wastes strength. Allowing it within limits makes rest possible. This acceptance does not remove discomfort, but it softens resistance. Eventually you slip into another shallow sleep. It does not last long, but it is enough to carry you forward minute by minute toward the faint light that will come. The cold remains steady and patient, but you remain too wrapped in layers and resolve. In the deep hours after midnight, this is what sleep on the Oregon Trail becomes. Not escape, not comfort, but persistence. You endure the night by yielding just enough resting where you can, trusting that morning will arrive, as it always has, bringing movement, warmth, and the chance to begin again. As the night stretches on, you become aware of your own breath in a new way. Each exhale feels heavier, lingering in the air before fading. In the faint light of the stars, you can see it rise and vanish again. This simple rhythm becomes something you focus on, a quiet companion in the darkness. Breathing here is not automatic. It is felt, noticed, sometimes managed. The air is colder now, stripped of any warmth it held earlier. It slips into your lungs with a dry sharpness that makes your chest tighten briefly before adjusting. You learn to breathe through your nose slower and shallower, warming the air before it reaches deeper inside. This small adaptation helps, even if only slightly. Over time, such adjustments become instinctive, part of how you survive the night. Frost forms gradually, almost invisibly. You sense it more than you see it at first. A faint stiffness in the blanket near your mouth. A subtle crunch when you shift your head. Moisture from your breath settles and hardens, creating a thin shell of ice along the fabric. By morning, this will be unmistakable, but for now it is just another sensation to register and accept. The stillness around you feels profound. Movement has slowed everywhere. Even the wind seems to pause as if conserving its own strength. In this quiet, small sounds carry weight. The slow creak of leather as an animal shifts. The faint rustle of fabric as someone nearby turns in their sleep. These noises arrive clearly, then fade, leaving silence behind. You lie there, eyes half closed, aware of the space between waking and sleep. Dreams begin to surface, but they are thin and fleeting. Images appear without context, then dissolve. The cold keeps you anchored to your body, preventing the deep detachment of true sleep. Rest here is layered like the blankets around you, each layer offering partial relief. Your nose and cheeks feel numb, exposed despite your efforts. You pull fabric closer, careful not to cover your mouth completely. Moisture trapped too close can make the cold worse. This awareness shapes even the smallest movements. You learn to leave a narrow gap, just enough for breath to escape without soaking the fabric. Time moves strangely in this state. You cannot tell how long you have been awake or asleep. Minutes stretch, then they vanish. Without light or sound to mark passage, the night feels endless, yet you know from experience that it is not. Dawn will come even if it feels impossibly far away now. Somewhere in the distance an animal calls out softly, then goes quiet. The sound does not alarm you. It is part of the landscape woven into the fabric of the night. You register it, then let it pass. Your mind is too tired to chase every stimulus. Selective attention becomes a form of rest. You shift slightly, testing a new position. The ground protests hard and unyielding. You settle again, accepting that comfort here is limited. The goal is not ease, but endurance. This understanding shapes how you think about rest. It is not something you achieve. It is something you gather in small amounts wherever you can. Your thoughts drift to the others around you. Dozens of bodies lie within a short distance, each wrapped in their own struggle with cold and fatigue. You feel a quiet sense of solidarity even without seeing them. Shared hardship creates a bond that does not require words. Breath continues to mark time. Inhale, exhale, a faint plume of frost. You focus on this rhythm when your mind begins to wander too far. It anchors you in the present, keeping worry from spiraling. This focus becomes a kind of meditation born not of intention, but necessity. Eventually, the cold eases its grip just enough for you to sink deeper. Muscles loosen slightly. The ache in your joints dulls. You drift not fully asleep, but not fully awake either. In this space, the night feels less demanding, more distant. When you stir again, you sense that time has passed. The cold remains, but it feels different, less sharp. This subtle change signals that dawn is approaching, even if the sky has not yet lightened. Your body recognizes this shift before your eyes do. For now you remain still, breathing slowly, letting the last hours of night pass over you. Frost gathers quietly. Stars hold their places overhead. Wrapped in layers and quiet resolve, you rest as best you can, suspended, in the calm stillness of the frozen dark, waiting for morning to loosen the cold's hold. As the night deepens, your awareness drifts beyond your own body to the quieter rhythms unfolding around you. Sleep on the trail is never evenly shared. Some rest more easily. Others struggle through the hours, especially those whose bodies are less able to hold warmth or recover from strain. In the darkness, you sense these differences without seeing them, felt through small sounds and subtle movements. Children stir more often. Their sleep is lighter, interrupted by cold and unfamiliar surroundings. A whimper escapes quickly, hushed by a parent's hand or whispered word. Small bodies lose heat quickly, even when wrapped carefully. Adults wake to check on them, pulling blankets higher, tucking edges closer, adjusting hats that have slipped. These actions are quiet and practiced, carried out with minimal disruption. Elders rest differently. Their movements are slower, more cautious. When they wake, it takes longer to shift position or reach for an extra layer. Joints stiffen in the cold, and pain settles in places already worn by years of labour. You imagine the effort it takes simply to turn over the breath held briefly until movement is complete. Nights like this demand patience as much as strength. Illness makes itself known most clearly after dark. A cough echoes more sharply in the stillness. Laboured breathing draws attention even when no one looks. Fevered bodies struggle to regulate temperature, shivering despite layers, or sweating into blankets that then grow cold. Caregivers remain half awake, listening for changes, ready to respond if needed. You sense the quiet vigilance that surrounds the most vulnerable. Even in exhaustion, attention remains divided. Rest is lighter, easily broken. Parents and companions listen through their own discomfort, alert to signs of trouble. This shared watchfulness shapes the night, binding people together through responsibility rather than conversation. The cold feels different when you think of it this way. It is no longer just a personal challenge. It is something that presses unevenly, testing some more harshly than others. This awareness deepens your own patience. You lie still, conserving warmth, knowing that movement or noise could ripple outward. Some nights comfort is redistributed. A blanket is passed from one person to another. A spot beneath the wagon is offered. These gestures happen quietly without ceremony. No one keeps track. Survival depends on such exchanges, and they are given without expectation of return. You hear a child breathe more steadily after being settled again. The sound softens the night-easing tension. In moments like this, relief spreads through the camp, subtle but real. Even small improvements feel significant when the cold has been relentless. Time moves slowly in these hours. Each adjustment, each quiet check stretches the night further. Yet there is also a rhythm to it. Wake, listen, adjust, rest again. This cycle repeats until it becomes almost soothing, a pattern that carries you forward without requiring thought. You feel your own body respond to this atmosphere. Rest comes in brief waves, deepening slightly when those around you are settled. The quiet grows heavier, more complete. Even the animals seem calmer, their movements less frequent. The night does not distinguish between strength and fragility. It presses on all alike. But how each person meets it varies. You recognize the quiet courage in enduring without complaint, in offering warmth, when you have little to spare, in staying alert when rest would be easier. As the hours pass, the camp holds together through these small acts of care. No grand gestures, no spoken praise, just steady presence. In this way, sleep on the Oregon Trail becomes a collective effort shaped as much by compassion as by endurance. Wrapped in your blankets, listening to the softened breathing around you, you let your own eyes close again. The cold remains, but it feels less isolating now. You're part of a shared night held together by watchfulness and restraint, waiting quietly for the first pale hint of morning. Even as most bodies settle into stillness, the animals remain part of the night's quiet motion. You hear them before you see them, though seeing is rare now. A soft stamp of a hoof, the faint jingle of a chain, the low sound of breath moving through large lungs. Livestock do not sleep deeply on the trail. They rest in intervals, always half aware, responding to cold hunger and unfamiliar ground. Oxen lie down heavily, their size evident even in darkness. When they rise again, the sound carries a slow shift of weight, followed by a dull thud. Horses tend to remain standing longer, shifting from leg to leg, conserving warmth through subtle movement. Their restlessness filters into your own awareness. Even if you cannot see them, you feel their presence, a reminder that survival here is shared across species. Cold affects animals differently, but it affects them all. Frost gathers on their backs, visible in the faint starlight when they move. Breath steams from their nostrils, steady and rhythmic. You recognize that their warmth is finite too. They burn energy to stay alive through the night, energy that must be replaced with feed that is often scarce. Someone moves quietly through the camp, checking tethers. Rope stiffens in freezing air knots, tightening or loosening unpredictably. A loose animal at night is a serious concern. Losing livestock can end a journey as surely as illness or injury. This knowledge keeps people alert even in exhaustion. You hear the soft murmur of reassurance offered to a nervous horse. Animals respond to voice more than words, to tone rather than meaning. Calm matters. Panic spreads easily in the dark. A startled animal can injure itself or others before anyone has time to react. These risks shape how carefully people move at night. Grazing is limited after dark, especially when frost covers the grass. Animals nibble where they can, but their intake is reduced. This makes them more restless, shifting in search of better footing or forage. Their discomfort echoes yours, a shared struggle against the cold ground. At times an animal's movement wakes you fully. A sudden snort, a sharper stamp. Your body tenses before your mind catches up. You listen, assessing. Does the sound signal danger or simply adjustment? Most often it is the latter. Over time you learn to recognize the difference, allowing yourself to relax again more quickly. You think about how closely people and animals depend on one another here. By day animals pull wagons and carry burdens. By night their presence offers a strange comfort. The sound of their breathing, their steady existence nearby, reinforces the sense that the camp is still intact, still whole. In colder stretches, animals are sometimes positioned to block wind their bodies, acting as living barriers. This is done carefully without causing distress. The warmth they give off is subtle but real. Even a slight reduction in wind can improve the night for those sleeping nearby. You notice how children often sleep more soundly once animals settle. Familiar sounds lull them much as they might at home with farm animals nearby. This familiarity softens fear even in unfamiliar surroundings. Adults draw comfort from it too, though they might not name it as such. The animals are not immune to illness or injury. A limp noticed during the day becomes more concerning at night when movement is harder, and cold stiffens joints. Someone may wake to check on a favoured ox running a hand along its flank, feeling for warmth, listening for irregular breath. These checks are done quietly with care. As the night wears on, animal movement slows. Energy is conserved. The camp grows stiller. You feel this shift even without opening your eyes. The rhythm of the night changes, becoming deeper, heavier. The cold remains, but the constant small motions lessen. You adjust your blankets again, responding instinctively to this lull. Your body mirrors the environment, settling as the animals settle. Breath slows. Muscles release a fraction more tension. You rest in this shared, quiet, human and animal alike, enduring the same frozen hours. Somewhere nearby a horse sighs, a long low sound that fades into silence. It feels like a punctuation mark closing a chapter of the night. You let it pass, allowing your awareness to soften once more. Sleep comes in fragments, but it comes. You drift with one ear open, one part of your mind always listening. This state feels natural now, shaped by repetition. You no longer expect full rest. You accept what the night offers. In these hours, the bond between people and animals becomes clear. Survival depends on mutual endurance. Everyone waits for morning, when movement will bring warmth and purpose again. Until then, you lie still, wrapped in layers, listening to the quiet breathing of the camp around you, trusting that the animals will remain, and that together you will make it through another cold night on the trail. Even as your body settles into a fragile rhythm of rest, you remain aware that not everyone in the camp is sleeping. Some nights someone stays awake by necessity rather than choice. You sense this before you see or hear it, a quiet alertness woven into the darkness. Sleep on the trail is shared, but so is responsibility. While most lie wrapped in blankets, one or two figures move slowly at the edges of camp. You open your eyes briefly and glimpse a shape near the wagons. A person stands still, then shifts weight, listening. This watch is not formal or ceremonial. It is practical. Fires can flare unexpectedly. Animals can panic. Strangers can appear without warning. The night carries risks that daylight keeps at bay, and someone must remain ready to respond. The presence of a watch changes how you rest. Even half asleep, you take comfort in knowing someone is alert. This knowledge allows your own vigilance to soften slightly. You're not alone in guarding the night. Others carry part of that burden for you, just as you will on another evening. Those who keep watch pace themselves carefully. Too much movement draws attention and wastes energy. Too little invites stiffness and cold. They walk short paths, pause often, warm hands near embers, then move again. Their breath fogs in the air, a quiet sign of life against the dark. Fear on the trail is rarely dramatic. It does not arrive as panic or shouting. It settles quietly like frost-shaping behavior without announcing itself. You feel it in the way the watcher pauses as unfamiliar sounds, in the careful scanning of the horizon, in the way hands stay close to tools even when nothing seems wrong. You lie still listening. A distant noise travels across the plain. It could be wind, it could be an animal. Your body tenses briefly, then relaxes as the sound fades. The watcher remains attentive posture unchanged. This steady presence keeps fear from growing roots. Time passes slowly for those awake. Minutes stretch. Cold seeps deeper. Fatigue presses heavily. Staying alert while exhausted requires effort and discipline. Some nights people take turns. One rests while another watches, then they switch. Other nights one person shoulders the duty alone, driven by responsibility or circumstance. You imagine what it feels like to stand there while others sleep. The quiet feels heavier. Every sound seems louder. Thoughts wander more easily. Memories surface uninvited. The mind fills the stillness with possibility. Yet the watcher remains anchored by task and necessity. Occasionally the watcher checks the animals. A hand runs along a rope. A soft sound calms a restless horse. These interactions are gentle, efficient. No one wants to wake the camp unless absolutely necessary. Night favours subtlety. You feel gratitude toward this unseen labour. It is easy to forget how much effort goes into allowing others to rest. The watcher gains little comfort in return. Their reward is simply the continuation of the night without incident. This quiet service is part of what keeps the journey moving forward. As you drift in and out of sleep, you sense the watcher's movements like a distant tide, sometimes closer, sometimes farther away. This rhythm becomes part of your rest, a background assurance that blends with wind and breath. There are nights when fear sharpens. A sudden sound breaks the quiet. The watcher stiffens. You feel it even before you fully wake. Muscles tense. Breath catches. Everyone waits listening. When the sound resolves into something harmless, relief spreads silently through the camp. No words are exchanged. The moment passes. These moments leave traces. Even after calm returns, sleep comes more slowly. The body remembers the jolt. Yet over time, repeated nights teach resilience. You learn that most sounds fade without consequence. You learn to trust the watcher, the camp, the routines that have carried you this far. As the night wears on, the watcher's movements slow. Cold and fatigue weigh heavily now. Dawn feels closer even if the sky remains dark. This knowledge helps sustain alertness. The hardest hours are nearly past. You stir slightly, aware that your own turn will come on another night. This shared understanding binds the group together. Everyone contributes when they can. No one escapes the demands of the night forever. Eventually the watcher pauses near the fire, warming hands briefly before moving on. Embers glow faintly, offering little heat but steady light. The camp remains intact. Animals breathe quietly. Blankets rise and fall with sleeping bodies. You feel yourself drifting deeper now. The knowledge that someone stands watch allows your mind to loosen its grip. Fear recedes into the background. Cold remains, but it feels less threatening. In this way, the night is managed rather than conquered. Through patience, shared duty, and quiet vigilance, the camp endures. You rest within this system, supported by others even as you sleep. As your breath slows and your thoughts soften, the watcher continues their careful circuit. Above stars hold steady, below the ground remains cold and firm. Between them human effort persists quietly, carrying the camp through darkness toward the promise of morning. In the deep hours of the night, illness makes itself known in subtle ways. It does not announce itself loudly or all at once. It stirs quietly, taking advantage of fatigue and cold. You sense it in the uneven rhythm of breathing nearby and the soft groan of someone shifting too carefully in the way a cough returns again and again without fully clearing. The darkness amplifies these signs, giving them more weight than they might carry during the day. Cold weakens the body's defenses. Muscles stiffen. Joints ache. Small injuries feel larger. A blister that barely registered at noon now throbs with every movement. A sore throat deepens scratchy and raw in the cold air. You lie still aware that the night gives discomfort time and space to grow. Someone nearby stirs restlessly. Blankets are pulled up then pushed away. The body struggles to find balance between heat and breath. Fever complicates this struggle, making skin feel hot even as the air bites. Caregivers wake at the slightest change hands, reaching out to feel foreheads or steady shoulders. These checks are done gently with practiced calm. Medicine on the trail is limited. What exists is used carefully saved for moments when it is truly needed. Most care relies on observation and patience. Warmth is offered. Water is shared. Comfort is given through presence as much as through action. At night, these small acts take on greater importance. You become aware of how sickness alters sleep for everyone, not just the person affected. Others rest more lightly, listening for changes. A single cough can ripple outward, pulling multiple people into wakefulness. Concern spreads quietly, carried on the same air as frost and breath. The cold intensifies symptoms that might otherwise be manageable. Chills shake bodies already worn thin. Limbs ache more deeply. Fatigue presses down harder. You feel this in your own body too, even if you're well. The night exaggerates every sensation, making it harder to ignore discomfort. Some illnesses pass quickly. A rough night followed by a better morning. Others linger, growing more serious with each cold evening. The uncertainty weighs heavily. There is no easy way to predict how a body will respond. This uncertainty keeps the mind alert even when rest is desperately needed. You lie still listening, hoping that the sounds around you soften rather than worsen. In the darkness, time stretches. Each minute feels longer when waiting for improvement or fearing decline. You focus on your breathing, grounding yourself, resisting the urge to imagine outcomes. Caregivers do what they can to conserve warmth while tending others. They kneel carefully, joints stiffen the cold. Hands move slowly, deliberately. After each check, they settle again, knowing they must preserve their own strength as well. Balance is essential. Exhaustion helps no one. The night teaches restraint. There is only so much that can be done before dawn. This knowledge tempers action, encouraging watchfulness rather than intervention unless necessary. You learn to sit with uncertainty, to trust that morning light will bring clearer options. As hours pass, the camp breathes together. Some sleep deeply despite discomfort. Others drift in and out, alert to every sound. Illness weaves itself into this pattern, another presence to accommodate. It does not dominate the night, but it shapes it, reminding everyone of their fragility. Eventually things settle. Cough space farther apart. Breathing evens out. Bodies relax just enough to allow rest. Relief spreads quietly, unspoken but felt. You release a breath you did not realize you were holding. The cold remains steady and unyielding, but the fear that illness brings eases, slightly replaced by cautious hope. You allow yourself to drift again, trusting that for now, the night will pass without worsening. In this way, sickness becomes part of the shared experience of sleeping on the trail. It demands attention without spectacle, care without abundance. Through patience and quiet vigilance, the camp carries its weakest members through the dark. As your own awareness softens, you remain tuned to the rhythms around you. Breath, stillness, occasional movement. These signs guide you, telling you when to rest and when to listen. Wrapped in layers anchored by the presence of others, you endure the night knowing that dawn will bring warmth, clarity, and another chance to move forward together. Sleep comes and goes in fragments, now drifting in without warning and slipping away just as quietly. You find yourself suspended between dreams and awareness, never fully committed to either. This state feels unfamiliar at first, but over time it becomes normal. On the trail, rest is not a single event. It is a collection of brief moments gathered across the night. When sleep does come, it brings images that feel close to the surface. Dreams form, quickly shaped by the day you have lived and the cold you are enduring. You see stretches of road repeating themselves, wagons roll endlessly forward, fires glow brighter than they ever do in waking life. These visions fade just as quickly, dissolving the moment you shift or hear a sound. You wake often without moving, eyes closed, listening. The habit forms naturally. Opening your eyes costs warmth, stillness preserves it. You learn to assess your surroundings through sound alone. A quiet camp is a safe camp. When nothing feels amiss, you allow yourself to sink again. The cold interrupts even the deepest drift. A numb shoulder, a foot pressed too long against frozen ground. These small discomforts pull you back to awareness. You adjust carefully, using as little motion as possible. Each movement is calculated, chosen for necessity rather than comfort. Your thoughts wander during these waking moments. They circle familiar subjects. How far you travel today, what lies ahead tomorrow, faces from home. These reflections are not dramatic. They pass gently like clouds moving across a dim sky. Fatigue dulls their edges, making them easier to release. Sometimes you dream of warmth, a hearth, a closed room, a bed that does not pull heat from your body. These dreams feel vivid, almost tangible, and waking from them brings a brief sense of loss. The contrast between imagined comfort and present reality sharpens the cold for a moment before you settle again. You notice that your body adapts to this broken rest. Muscles recover in small increments. The sharpest aches dull slightly. This is enough. The trail teaches you to accept partial recovery as success. Waiting for perfect rest would mean waiting forever. Around you, others share this pattern. You hear the soft sigh of someone drifting back to sleep. A nearby body shifts, then stills. These movements happen in waves, as if the camp breathes together, waking and resting in loose synchrony. Fear surfaces occasionally in these half-waking moments. A sudden thought of danger, a memory of a story heard earlier. These fears feel more intense at night when imagination has more space to roam. You acknowledge them, then let them pass. Experience has taught you that most nights end without incident. The boundary between dream and waking blurs further as the hours pass. You may not remember whether something happened or was only imagined. A sound, a voice, a movement. The mind, tired and cold, weaves fragments together without clear distinction. This uncertainty becomes part of the experience, accepted rather than questioned. Despite interruptions, a deeper weariness settles in. Your body wants rest badly enough to claim it whenever possible. You drift again, held briefly by unconsciousness, before rising back to the surface. Each time you sink a little farther. As dawn approaches, the quality of sleep changes. It grows heavier, less restless. The cold remains, but it no longer sharpens. Instead, it feels muted, as if the night itself is tiring. This subtle shift is familiar. Your body recognizes it as the final stretch. You lie still, letting these last moments of rest gather. There is no rush. Morning will come whether you sleep or not. This knowledge allows you to relax slightly, easing the vigilance that carried you through the night. In these final hours, sleep feels less like an escape and more like a bridge. It carries you from darkness toward light, from stillness toward movement. Even broken and shallow, it has done its work. As your breathing slows and your thoughts quiet once more, you drift into another brief stretch of rest. It is not deep, but it is enough. Enough to stand again, enough to walk, enough to face the day that waits just beyond the edge of night. Some nights do not remain steady. They shift without warning, changing the rules you thought you understood. You sense it first as a change in the air, subtle but unmistakable. The stillness tightens, the cold sharpens. Wind begins to move with purpose rather than wandering. Even half asleep, your body registers this change and pulls you closer to wakefulness. Snow often arrives quietly at first. A faint whisper against canvas, a soft tapping on blankets. You do not always recognize it immediately. At times, you mistake it for drifting dust or frost shaken loose by wind. Only when it continues steady and deliberate do you realize what is happening. Snow on the trail is not romantic. It is weight and cold and consequence. You feel it settling on your blankets, light at first, then heavier as minutes pass. Fabric grows damp beneath the accumulating layer. Moisture steals warmth, quickly turning discomfort into urgency. You shift brushing at the surface, careful not to expose yourself too much. Movement invites cold air beneath your coverings, but doing nothing allows snow to soak through. Wind often follows snow or arrives ahead of it like a warning. It pushes under blankets, finds seams in clothing, searches for weakness. You curl tighter, pressing layers down with your hands and knees. The wind does not tire. It moves endlessly, reshaping the night with each passing gust. When storms come, suddenly sleep dissolves completely. You rise part way, heart quickened, mind alert. Around you others are doing the same. The camp stirs with quiet urgency. Fires are already low, offering little help. Wagons groan as wind presses against them. Canvas flaps snapping sharply in the dark. You hear voices now low and direct. Instructions are brief. Blankets are shaken free of snow. Extra layers are pulled on despite stiff fingers. Those beneath wagons feel the wind channeling through the narrow space, colder and more focused. Those outside feel exposed snow stinging faces and hands. The ground changes under snow. It grows slick, uneven. Frost beneath it turns to ice. Standing becomes harder. Kneeling is painful. Yet tasks must be done. Wagons are checked, tethers tightened, animals reassured. Panic helps no one. Calm becomes a discipline rather than a feeling. Snowstorms on the trail compress time. Everything becomes immediate. There is no thought of tomorrow, only the next hour or the next adjustment. You feel the strain in your shoulders, the tension in your jaw. Cold sharpens focus, narrowing attention to what matters most. Wind drives snow sideways, forcing it into every opening. It slips beneath wagon edges into sleeves down collars. You pull fabric higher, cover your face, partially leaving only enough space to breathe. Each breath feels colder than the last. Your eyelashes gather frost. Blinking becomes deliberate. You sense fear moving through the camp, contained but present. Not the panic of sudden danger, but the heavy awareness that storms have consequences. Wet bedding can mean illness. Lost animals can mean failure. Prolonged exposure can weaken even the strongest bodies. These thoughts surface uninvited, then are pushed aside in favour of action. In moments like this, people move closer together. Shared warmth matters. Bodies cluster where possible, blocking wind with their own forms. A blanket is shared, a shoulder offered. These gestures happen quickly without discussion. Survival favours cooperation. You notice how the storm alters sound. Wind roars, swallowing smaller noises. Snow muffles the ground, dulling footsteps. The world feels enclosed even though nothing has closed in. Visibility shrinks to arm's length. Beyond that, the night feels blank and impenetrable. Time stretches. Minutes feel long. You cannot tell how hard the snow falls or how long it will last. There is no way to measure progress. You endure by focusing on small tasks. Hold this edge down. Adjust that rope. Keep breathing steady. Eventually the storm eases, though not always fully. Wind softens, first losing its sharp edge. Snow tapers off, shifting from steady fall to drifting flakes. The change is gradual, almost tentative. You feel it before you fully trust it. When movement slows again, exhaustion rushes in. Muscles tremble with fatigue. Cold seeps deeper after effort stops. You return to your bedding, now heavier and colder than before. You shake it as best you can, knowing it will never be fully dry tonight. Lying down again feels different now. The ground is colder, the air harsher. You tuck blankets, tightly pressing damp fabric close in hopes of trapping warmth. It is imperfect, but it is what you have. Around you the camp settles once more. Voices fade, movement slows. The storm leaves behind a deeper cold and a harder silence. Snow reflects faint starlight, brightening the darkness slightly. The landscape feels altered, transformed. You lie still, listening to the last sighs of wind moving across the plain. Your body aches, but relief settles in alongside it. The worst has passed. You have endured another test, added another memory to the growing collection of nights survived. Sleep returns slowly, cautiously. The mind remains alert longer after such disruption, yet fatigue eventually claims its due. You drift again, carrying the weight of snow and wind in your muscles, letting rest gather where it can. Storms like this reshape expectations. They teach respect for weather's power and humility before it. On the trail, nights are never guaranteed to remain what they begin as. This knowledge lingers, sharpening awareness long after calm returns. As you finally slip into a shallow rest, snow lies quietly around you, wind reduced to a whisper. The night holds its breath again. Wrapped in damp blankets and steady resolve, you sleep as best you can, knowing that even the harshest nights eventually loosen their grip and give way to morning. After nights shaped by cold and disruption, small habits take on a quiet importance. You begin to notice how certain actions repeated each evening help steady your mind before sleep. These rituals are not grand or formal. They are personal, practical, and often barely noticed by anyone else. Yet they carry you through the night, offering a sense of familiarity when everything else feels uncertain. You start by arranging your space in the same order each time. Bedding laid out the same way, boots placed in the same spot, clothing folded or rolled with care. This consistency brings comfort. Even when the ground changes or the weather turn harsh, these small constants remain. They remind you that some things are still within your control. Many people develop habits around warmth. Some warm stones near the fire and tuck them into blankets. Others heat tools or cups, briefly using them as makeshift heaters before setting them aside. You might hold your hands close to embers longer than necessary, soaking in every bit of heat before retreating. These gestures feel deliberate, almost ceremonial. Quiet moments matter too. Before lying down, you pause. You look at the sky if it is clear, taking in the stars. You listen to the wind, noting its direction and strength. This brief awareness helps settle your thoughts. It prepares you to rest within the conditions rather than resist them. Some people murmur a few words to themselves, a phrase remembered from home, a simple wish for safety. Others prefer silence, focusing on breath until tension eases. These private practices vary widely, shaped by upbringing and temperament. What they share is intention. They mark the transition from effort to rest. Children cling to their own routines, a familiar object held close, a whispered reassurance repeated nightly. These habits help them feel grounded despite constant change. Adults too find comfort in repetition, even if they would not name it as such. Routine becomes a shelter of its own. You notice how these rituals influence sleep. They do not erase discomfort, but they soften its edge. By the time you lie down, your body's already easing into rest. Muscles relax more readily. Breathing slows sooner. The mind releases its grip a little faster. Over time, these habits adapt. What worked in warmer weather is adjusted for colder nights. what helped before a storm changes afterward. Flexibility becomes part of the ritual itself. You learn to respond rather than cling rigidly to routine. These practices also carry social weight. Seeing others follow their own quiet patterns reassures you. It signals resilience. Everyone is finding a way to endure. This shared persistence strengthens the group without requiring words. As you settle down, you return to your own small sequence. A final adjustment of blankets. A slow breath drawn deep and released. You feel the cold pressing in, but you also feel prepared. Not because the night will be easy, but because you've learned how to meet it. These rituals do not promise comfort. They promise continuity. Night after night, they carry you through darkness toward morning. Wrapped in habit as much as fabric, you rest, letting the familiar motions guide you gently into sleep. As the camp grows quiet and bodies settle into their places, another layer of comfort moves through the darkness. It is not warmth or shelter, but something quieter and less tangible. Many people turn inward at this hour, reaching for beliefs that help steady the mind when the body can do no more. You sense this shift even without seeing it carried on the hush that follows the day's final movements. Some lie still and whisper words meant only for themselves. Others speak softly with a partner or child, voices low and unhurried. These words are familiar, repeated often enough to feel worn smooth. They do not seek to change the night or soften the cold. They offer reassurance, instead a reminder of meaning beyond discomfort. You notice how these moments slow the pace of the evening. Breath deepens, shoulders ease. The mind turns away from what might go wrong and rests briefly on what feels steady. Even those who do not speak or pray feel the effect. Calm spreads quietly, like warmth, shared from one body to another, for some belief is tied to memory. A voice remembered from childhood. A phrase spoken long ago in a warm room. Recalling it now creates a bridge between past and present, reminding you that life existed before this journey and will continue after it. This thought alone can ease fear. Others find comfort simply in the act of reflection. Reviewing the day, acknowledging effort, letting go of what cannot be changed until morning. This quiet accounting brings a sense of closure, allowing the mind to rest instead of replaying every step and worry. You sense how these inward practices differ from person to person, yet share a common purpose. They create a pause. They mark the boundary between waking effort and night endurance. In a world where so little is predictable, this boundary matters. Children respond strongly to these moments. A familiar phrase or gentle touch settles them faster than blankets alone ever could. Parents linger beside them, staying until breathing slows and bodies soften. These few extra minutes of attention often determine how the night unfolds. You feel your own thoughts slowing as well. The day's concerns lose their urgency. Tomorrow remains unknown, but it no longer presses so hard. For now it is enough to be here, alive and resting. Around you, the camp holds this quiet together. No one announces it. No one directs it. It emerges naturally, shaped by fatigue and hope. The night feels less empty in these moments, filled instead with quiet intention. As you lie back, eyes closed, you carry this calm with you. It does not eliminate the cold or the hardness of the ground, but it makes them easier to bear. The body follows the mind's lead, relaxing just enough to allow rest. Sleep comes more gently now. Thoughts slow, then soften. Breath deepens. Wrapped in layers of cloth and quiet belief, you drift. Trusting that this inner stillness will hold until morning light returns. Even after darkness settles and most of the camp grows still, some work continues quietly. It is easy to imagine night as a pause, a complete stopping point, but on the trail it rarely is. Certain tasks wait until evening, when movement slows and the day's demands ease. You sense this ongoing labour in small sounds and brief motions, often unnoticed by those already resting. Clothing needs attention. A torn seam discovered during the day cannot always wait until morning. fingers stiff with cold guide needle and thread by firelight. Each stitch is careful, deliberate. There is no room for waste. A repaired sleeve or sock can mean the difference between warmth and misery on the next cold night. This work is slow, but it is steady, carried out with practiced patience. Food preparation also extends beyond supper. Some grind grain for the next day. Others portion supplies, counting carefully. These tasks require focus even when exhaustion presses hard. Mistakes here ripple outward, affecting the group later. The night offers a rare chance to work without the pull of the road urging haste. Children's needs do not end with sleep. Blankets are checked, clothing adjusted. A child who has kicked free of covers is gently tucked in again. These motions are quiet and repetitive, done half awake, guided by familiarity rather than thought. You feel the tenderness in these acts, the quiet determination to protect comfort where possible. Water is another concern. Containers are refilled if the source is close enough and safe to reach. Frozen surfaces complicate this task, requiring care and patience. Water carried now will be used at first light, saving precious time in the morning. This foresight eases the next day before it begins. You notice how these evening tasks often fall to the same people. Strength alone does not decide this. Experience and habit play a role. Some have learned to push a little longer into the night, trading rest now for ease later. Others take on these duties because someone must and they are willing. The work is not hurried, but it is purposeful. Movements are economical. Energy is conserved even as effort continues. You see how this balance has been learned through repetition, shaped by nights when fatigue won out and consequences followed. There is little conversation during this time. Words feel unnecessary. When they are spoken, they are brief and practical. A quiet request, a simple acknowledgement. The night encourages restraint, guiding interaction toward efficiency. You feel a deep respect for this unseen labour. It supports the visible effort of travel, smoothing rough edges and preventing small problems from growing. Without it, days would begin harder, colder, and more chaotic. As these tasks wind down, tools are put away carefully. Nothing is left out to be lost or tripped over in the dark. This attention to detail becomes instinctive. The cost of carelessness is too high. Eventually, those who have stayed awake longest begin to settle themselves. Blankets are adjusted. Positions found. The last small sounds fade. The camp moves closer to full stillness. You lie listening, aware that rest here is layered. Some sleep deeply, others hover close to waking. Some work quietly until exhaustion insists on stillness. All contribute in their own way. The night accepts these efforts without comment. Cold remains. Darkness holds. Yet within this stillness, the work done quietly shapes what comes next. Morning will arrive with fewer obstacles because of what happened here unseen and unremarked. Wrapped in your own blankets, you feel a sense of completion settle over the camp. Tasks finished, needs met as well as possible. You allow yourself to drift again, knowing that even while you rested, the journey continued in small, careful ways. Lying still beneath the open sky, you become aware of a feeling that's harder to name than cold or fatigue. It settles quietly, often unnoticed. At first, then grows clearer in the long hours of night. Despite the closeness of others, despite shared fires and whispered words, there is a deep sense of solitude here. The land is vast, the sky is endless, and within that immensity each person carries their own private thoughts. You feel it most when the camp is fully quieted. Breathing around you evens out. Movement slow to nothing. In this stillness, the presence of others fades into background awareness. What remains is your own mind awake in the dark. The prairie stretches beyond sight, indifferent and silent. You are one small point of warmth against an enormous night. This loneliness is not the same as being alone. You're surrounded by people close enough to hear them breathe, yet their thoughts are inaccessible. Their memories and worries remain sealed within them just as yours do. At night, this separation feels more pronounced. Daylight encourages cooperation and conversation. Darkness turns attention inward. Thoughts drift toward home, not always a specific place, but a feeling, familiar routines, known paths, rooms that hold warmth without effort. These memories arrive gently without force. They do not overwhelm. Instead, they hover, reminding you of what has been left behind. The distance feels greater at night, stretched by the dark. You notice how this feeling changes over time. Early in the journey, it may have felt sharp, unsettling. Now it is quieter, more contemplative. The trail reshapes emotional responses as much as physical ones. What once felt unbearable becomes something you can sit with, observe, and let pass. The sky above deepens this awareness. Stars spread in every direction, unbroken by structures or light. You have never seen them so clearly, so numerous. Their presence is both beautiful and humbling. They remind you of time passing beyond human concerns, of journeys older and larger than your own. Some find comfort in this perspective. Others feel small beneath it. You experience both sometimes in the same moment. The mind shifts easily at night, unguarded by distraction. Feelings mingle without clear boundaries. You think about the people sleeping nearby. Each one carries a different reason for being here, different hopes, different fears. By day, these differences blur into shared effort. By night, they re-emerge quietly. You imagine the thoughts passing through other minds, the memories revisited, the doubts considered and set aside. Loneliness here does not demand resolution. There is no expectation that it be fixed or eased. It is simply part of the experience, like cold or hunger. Recognizing it helps. Naming it internally gives it shape without letting it dominate. You adjust your blanket slightly, a small grounding action. The fabric presses against your body, reminding you where you are. The ground beneath you is solid. The air above is clear. These physical sensations anchor you, pulling attention back from drifting too far. Breathing becomes a point of focus again. Inhale, exhale. Each breath is visible, briefly marking your presence in the dark. The rhythm steadies your thoughts, giving them a gentle structure. Loneliness softens when attention narrows to what is immediate and real. Over time, this solitude fosters a different kind of strength. Being alone with your thoughts night after night teaches you which ones matter and which can be released. The mind learns to let go more easily, to rest without constant stimulation. You sense how this inner quiet prepares people for the journey ahead. The trail demands endurance, not just of body, but of spirit. Night offers a space to build that endurance slowly through reflection and acceptance. Eventually, the feeling of loneliness shifts again. It becomes less about absence and more about space. Room to think, room to feel, room to simply exist without performing or producing. In a life defined by movement and labor, this stillness has value. As your thoughts settle, the sense of separation fades slightly. You remember that others nearby share this same night, even if their inner worlds remain unseen. There is comfort in parallel experience, even without direct connection. Sleep returns gradually, not deep or complete, but sufficient. The mind loosens its hold, allowing rest to slip in around the edges. Loneliness recedes, replaced by a quieter neutrality. Under the open sky, wrapped in blankets, and thought you drift again. The prairie remains vast. The stars remain distant. Yet within this immensity you rest, carrying both solitude and connection, knowing that morning will draw everyone outward once more, back into shared motion and purpose. You wake before the sky is fully changed, stirred by a shift you can feel more than see. The sight loosens its grip slowly, reluctantly, and the cold settles into a new stillness. When you move even slightly, your blankets resist. They are stiff now, edges crusted with frost that crackles softly as fabric bends. This sound is unmistakable, a quiet signature of the hours just past. Your breath clouds the air as you lift your head. The ground feels harder than it did when you lay down, as if the cold has tightened it from below. You pull a blanket aside and see the evidence of the night clearly now. Ice rims the folds. A thin layer of white dusts the surface where your breath fell again and again. It is strangely delicate, this frost, beautiful in a way that does nothing to ease discomfort. You test your fingers, flexing them slowly. Stiffness answers first, then sensation returns in small, sharp pulses. Toes ache dully inside socks that have lost much of their softness. This is the moment many remember most vividly when recalling nights on the trail. Waking is harder than sleeping. The body protests the effort of re-entering motion. Around you, others begin to stir. The camp comes alive in fragments. A blanket shaken free of ice. A low groan as someone sits up too quickly. The soft thump of boots meeting frozen ground. These sounds ripple outward, signalling that morning is beginning its slow work. You sit up carefully, letting blood move gradually. The cold air bites at exposed skin, cheeks sting, ears burn. You pull clothing closer, layering instinctively. Everything feels heavier now, dampened by frost and stiff with cold. What warmed you through the night must now be managed again. Blankets are inspected with practical eyes. Ice is brushed away where possible. Fabric is shaken, sending crystals into the air where they glitter briefly before vanishing. Nothing dries fully in this cold, but removing surface frost helps. Each small improvement matters. You glance toward the wagons. Canvas gleams, faintly coated with frost that dulls its colour. Wheels are rimmed with white. Metal parts sting to the touch. Even wood feels colder than before, as if it has absorbed the night and holds it close. Animals stir too. Breath steams from their nostrils in thick plumes. They shift weight, stamping lightly, eager for movement and feed. Their discomfort mirrors your own, and this shared readiness to move forward creates a subtle momentum through the camp. The sky begins to lighten almost imperceptibly. Darkness thins at the edges, turning from deep black to muted grey. This change brings no immediate warmth, but it carries promise. You feel it in your chest, a quiet lift of anticipation. The night is ending. That knowledge alone makes the cold easier to bear. Hands move stiffly as people begin the work of breaking camp. Movements are slower than later in the day, body still waking. Yet there is determination here too. Warmth lies ahead, earned through effort. The sooner movement begins, the sooner feeling returns. You roll your bedding carefully, mindful of frozen edges. It resists folding, protesting with faint cracks and snaps. You press it together anyway, using body weight to help. The cold demands force where gentler handling would suffice in warmer times. As you stand, you feel the ground beneath your boots firm and unforgiving. Each step sends a jolt upward through legs and spine. Muscles complain, then slowly adjust. Motion brings circulation. Circulation brings relief. The morning air smells clean and sharp. Frost sharpens every scent, making the world feel newly washed. Smoke from early fires rises straight up, thin and pale. The camp feels quieter than it will later, as if everyone is still gathering themselves. You take one more look at the place where you slept. The ground bears the imprint of your body, faint but visible. It is a temporary mark, soon erased by movement and weather. Yet it holds memory. Another night endured, another lesson absorbed. As daylight grows stronger, the frost begins to soften slightly. Ice loosens its grip on fabric and earth. This change is slow, but it is steady. You feel encouraged by it, even as your fingers remain numb. The night's cold lingers in your bones, but it no longer feels insurmountable. You have woken. You are moving. That is enough. Wrapped in layers and resolve, you step into the morning carrying the memory of frozen blankets and stiff limbs, with you knowing they will fade as the day unfolds. Morning does not bring ease right away. It brings obligation. The cold still clings to everything, but the work cannot wait for warmth. You pull yourself fully upright, and begin the task of breaking camp hands stiff and reluctant. Each motion feels heavier than it should, as if the night has added weight to your body and every object around you. Packing begins immediately. Blankets are folded or rolled, still damp with frost pressed tight to keep them manageable. They will dry later, perhaps once the sun rises higher. For now they are simply stowed as they are. Perfection is not possible at this hour. Function must suffice. Your fingers ache as you tie straps and lift bundles. Knots resist rope, stiffened by cold. You blow on your hands, rub them together briefly, then continue. Pausing too long only makes the cold bite deeper. Motion, even uncomfortable motion, is the only way forward. Around you the camp stirs with similar effort. No one moves quickly, everyone moves steadily. The sounds of morning are practical and muted. Leather creaks, wood knocks softly. A few low voices exchange brief instructions. There is little conversation. Words feel unnecessary when breath is better spent warming the body. Animals are brought into readiness. Harnesses are fitted carefully, buckles worked loose from their frozen stiffness. Oxen lean into their yokes, patient and familiar with the routine. Horses stamp and toss their heads, eager to move. Their restlessness mirrors your own. All of you are waiting for the same thing, warmth through motion. Fires are coaxed back to life where embers remain. A small flame is enough to heat water to take the sharp edge off the morning. Steam rises visible in the cold air. The smell of smoke settles briefly over the camp, grounding and familiar. Even a little heat feels significant after the long night. You swallow something warm if you can. Coffee thin and bitter, a bit of porridge, anything that sends heat inward. This warmth spreads slowly, easing the tightness in your chest and hands. It does not last long, but it helps you begin. As wagons are loaded, care is taken to distribute weight evenly. Items must be secured tightly. A loose bundle can shift dangerously once movement begins. You check straps twice, then once more. Experience has taught caution. Mistakes made in haste are remembered for miles. The sun finally edges above the horizon, pale and weak at first. Light spills across the frosted ground, turning it briefly brilliant. Ice crystals catch the glow and scatter it. For a moment the world looks gentler than it feels. This beauty does not stop the cold, but it lifts the spirit. As the first wagons begin to move, the sound ripples through the camp. Wheels creak into motion. Hooves crunch against frozen soil. You feel the vibration through your feet, a signal that the day has begun in earnest. Standing still now feels worse than moving. You are ready to go. You take one last look at the space where you slept. It already feels distant, as if it belongs to another time. The ground bears fewer signs of your presence now. Soon it will look untouched again. This impermanence is familiar. Nights leave marks on the body more than the land. When you step forward, cold air fills your lungs sharply. Then your legs begin their steady rhythm. Blood moves, muscles warm. Sensation returns fully to your hands. With each step, the night's grip loosens. Conversation returns slowly as bodies wake. Someone remarks on the cold. Another points out the weather ahead. These exchanges are brief but companionable. Shared discomfort eases through acknowledgement. As the wagons stretch into line once more, you settle into the familiar pace. The memory of frozen blankets and stiff joints fades with each mile. It remains, but it no longer dominates. The trail pulls your attention forward. Morning on the Oregon Trail is not gentle, but it is purposeful. It carries you away from the hardships of night and into the work of day. With each step you leave the cold behind just a little more trusting. That movement will bring warmth, and that night when it comes again will be met with the same quiet endurance. As the day unfolds and warmth finally reaches your hands and back, the memory of the night lingers in quieter ways. You carry it with you as you walk, not as discomfort anymore, but as knowledge. Each cold night leaves behind small lessons gathered without effort, absorbed simply by enduring. These lessons shape how you will face the next evening when the wagons stop again. You notice how your behaviour has changed. You pay closer attention to the sky as afternoon fades, watching clouds and light with more care than you once did. A slight shift in wind now means something. A drop in temperature before sunset sends a signal through your body. Experience has taught you what to prepare for long before darkness arrives. You think ahead to where you will sleep next. Ground that once looked acceptable now raises questions. You look for subtle slopes, for shelter from wind, for signs of dampness. These observations happen almost without thought. The trail has trained your senses, sharpening them through repetition and necessity. Packing changes too. Items you once buried deep in the wagon are now kept closer. Extra socks, a thicker blanket, a piece of cloth useful for blocking drafts. You have learned that what you need at night must be easy to reach. Searching in the dark with numb fingers is a mistake you will not repeat. Your body has learned as well. You recognize early signs of cold settling in. You adjust layers before shivering begins. You know when to eat more, when to drink, when to slow down and conserve energy. These choices may seem small, but together they make the night more bearable. You observe these changes in others too. New travellers watch and imitate those with more nights behind them. Advice is offered, sparingly, often demonstrated rather than spoken. Someone lays their bedding differently. Someone positions their wagon more carefully. These examples speak louder than instruction. Mistakes still happen. Nights remain unpredictable, but fewer errors are made through ignorance. Most are born of circumstance beyond control. This distinction matters. Knowing you did what you could brings a quiet peace, even when conditions are harsh. You also learn restraint. Not every discomfort requires immediate action. Some cold passes if you wait. Some aches fade with stillness. The night teaches patience, showing you when to respond and when to endure. This balance becomes easier to find with time. As the sun climbs higher, the trail stretches ahead dusty and bright. The night feels farther away now, softened by warmth and movement. Yet its lessons remain close, shaping your thoughts as afternoon turns toward evening once more. You understand now that sleeping on the Oregon Trail was never about mastering the night. It was about learning to live within its limits. Each freezing hour offered instruction whether you wanted it or not. Those who listened endured longer, suffered less. Walking forward, you feel a growing confidence, not bold or loud, but steady. You have faced the cold and come through it. You will face it again, better prepared than before. This knowledge settles quietly, as reassuring as a well-worn blanket. When dusk comes again, you will act differently. Not faster but wiser. And when you lie down once more on frozen ground, you will do so with an understanding earned one night at a time. As days pass and the trail carries you onward, you begin to notice how the nights change with the season. The cold you once thought severe takes on new depth as autumn advances. Evenings arrive earlier now. Light fades more quickly, and the warmth of the sun lingers for a shorter time. You feel this shift in your body before you fully acknowledge it in your thoughts. The air grows sharper by late afternoon. Shadows stretch longer across the ground. When you stop walking, chill settles in almost immediately. These signs prompt subtle changes in how you move through the end of each day. You conserve energy, more carefully aware that the night ahead will ask more of you than before. Leaves appear along the trail in greater numbers, brittle and dry. Grass loses its softness, crunching underfoot in the morning frost. Streams skim over with thin ice at their edges. These details mark time more clearly than any calendar could. They signal urgency. Winter is not far behind. Camps are made earlier when possible. Darkness now feels heavier, more absolute. Tasks that once fit easily into twilight must be completed faster. You feel the pressure of this narrowing window, urging hands to work with purpose. Delays cost warmth, and warmth has become harder to reclaim. At night the cold settles deeper into the ground. Even thick bedding struggles to block it completely. You wake more often, adjusting tucking, curling tighter. Breath fogs more heavily. Frost forms more quickly. What once took hours now happens within minutes of lying down. Food takes on greater importance as temperatures drop. A full stomach offers warmth that blankets cannot. Portions are watched carefully balanced against dwindling supplies. Hunger and cold together are a hard pairing. You learn to plan meals with the night in mind, not just the miles ahead. Clothing choices shift as well. Extra layers appear earlier in the evening. Damp garments are changed sooner, knowing they will chill rapidly after sunset. What once felt excessive now feels necessary. Adaptation happens quietly without comment. Animals respond to the season too. Their coats thicken. Their movements slow slightly. They seek shelter instinctively, turning their bodies away from wind. You pay closer attention to their behavior, reading signs of discomfort or strain. Their well-being remains closely tied to your own. The sense of urgency sharpens with each colder night. You feel it in the way conversations shorten, in the way people look toward the horizon more often. There is less indulgence and delay. The trail ahead must be covered before conditions worsen further. Despite this pressure, there is also clarity. The approaching cold focuses effort. Priorities sharpen. What matters is kept close. What does not is left behind, sometimes literally. This narrowing of concern simplifies decisions even as it increases risk. At night, lying on frozen ground, you feel the season's weight most clearly. The cold feels less forgiving now, less willing to ease before morning. Yet you also feel more capable. Experience has built resilience. You know what to expect and how to respond. Autumn nights teach you to respect time as much as weather. Each day lost to hesitation costs more warmth later. Each mile gained feels significant. This awareness carries into sleep, shaping how deeply you rest and how quickly you rise. As the sky darkens earlier and stars appear sooner, you wrap yourself tighter and breathe steadily. The season has changed, and so have you. The nights are colder, but you meet them with a deeper understanding shaped by every freezing hour that has already passed. As the journey stretches on, you begin to notice a quiet gap between what was imagined before setting out and what the nights have actually been like. Early hopes may have painted sleep as a simple reward after long days, a time to recover fully before moving on. Reality has been different. Nights have demanded as much endurance as the road itself, teaching lessons that no description could fully convey. You think back to the ideas that once shaped expectations, stories heard before departure, advice passed along second-hand. Some spoke of adventure and open skies, others warned of hardship, but even those warnings could not capture the texture of frozen ground beneath your body or the way cold settles into joints and breath. Knowing something in theory is very different from living it night after night. The contrast becomes clearer as experience accumulates. What once felt shocking now feels familiar. Cold that would have seemed unbearable earlier is now something you know how to meet. You recognize its stages. You know when to adjust and when to endure. This shift marks a quiet transformation, one that happens without ceremony. You notice this change in others as well. Faces that once showed surprise at discomfort now carry calm focus instead. Complaints fade, replaced by practical adjustments. People speak less about what should have been and more about what can be done. Expectation yields to acceptance, and acceptance brings a measure of peace. Memory plays a role in this process. Early nights stand out sharply remembered for their intensity. Later ones blur together, forming a pattern rather than individual events. This blending is not forgetfulness, it is adaptation. The mind protects itself by smoothing edges, allowing endurance to continue. You realize that many assumptions about sleep were shaped by settled life. Beds, walls, and controlled environments create a sense of entitlement to comfort. The trail strips that away, revealing sleep as a biological need rather than a guaranteed experience. Here rest is earned through effort and compromise. This understanding changes how you think about comfort altogether. Small things take on new value. A patch of ground that slopes just right, a blanket placed carefully beneath rather than above, a windbreak positioned with thought. These details matter more than any imagined luxury ever could. As you walk during the day, you reflect on how expectation influences suffering. Nights felt harder when they failed to match imagined ease. They became more manageable once you stopped measuring them against a standard that no longer applied. Letting go of that comparison eased the strain. You see this shift mirrored in the rhythm of the camp. Fewer conversations dwell on what is missing. More attention goes to what is working. This practical mindset supports endurance, allowing energy to be spent where it counts. The trail teaches realism through repetition. Each night confirms the same truth. Comfort will be limited. Control will be partial. Preparation matters. Attitude matters just as much. These lessons settle quietly, becoming part of how you approach not only sleep but the journey as a whole. As dusk approaches again, you feel calmer than you once did. Not because the night will be easier, but because you know what it will ask of you. You no longer expect rest to solve everything. You expect it to sustain you just enough. Lying down later, wrapped against the cold, you carry this adjusted understanding with you. Sleep comes in fragments, but it is no longer surprising. It is simply how nights unfold here. This acceptance lightens the burden, allowing you to rest within reality rather than against it. In this way, expectation gives way to experience, and experience reshapes how you endure. Nights on the trail stop being tests of imagined toughness and become part of a steady pattern of living. You rest where you can, wake when you must, and continue forward, guided by what you have learned rather than what you once assumed. As the journey continues, you begin to feel how these nights settle into you, becoming something carried rather than endured. The cold, the interrupted sleep, the long hours of listening to wind and breath all leave their mark. Yet that mark is not only fatigue, it is resilience built quietly and steadily, shaped by repetition rather than effort alone. You notice it in how you respond to discomfort. When the ground presses hard against your side, you no longer tense immediately. You adjust, then wait. When cold slips through a seam in your blankets, you fix it with calm efficiency. These responses feel automatic, now guided by experience rather than frustration. What once felt overwhelming has become manageable. This endurance extends beyond the night. During the day, you walk with greater awareness of your body's limits. You pace yourself more wisely. You drink when you should rest, when possible eat with the night in mind. The memory of cold hours shapes your decisions long before darkness returns. You sense this change in others as well. Movements grow more economical. Complaints lessen. People conserve energy, instinctively saving it for moments when it matters most. There is a shared understanding that strength is not about pushing constantly, but about lasting. Hard nights create a quiet confidence. Not the kind that announces itself, but one that settles deep. You trust your ability to endure what comes next, even if you cannot predict it. This trust steadies you, easing anxiety about the unknown stretches ahead. The trail demands this kind of strength. It is not impressed by bravado or speed. It rewards patience, preparation, and the ability to recover from discomfort without dwelling on it. Nights spent shivering under stars teach these lessons more effectively than any advice ever could. You think about how these experiences will remain with you long after the journey ends. Even in warmth and shelter, you may remember what it felt like to sleep on frozen ground, to wake with frost on your blankets, to find rest in fragments. These memories will change how you think about comfort and security, giving you a deeper appreciation for both. As evening approaches again, you feel ready. Not eager, but prepared. You know what to do. You know how to meet the night with steady resolve. This readiness is the product of every cold hour endured so far. When you lie down later, The night greets you with familiar challenges. Cold presses in, sounds drift through the darkness, sleep comes and goes. Yet beneath it all there is a sense of capability. You're not guessing anymore, you're responding. Endurance, you realize, is not about becoming hardened, it is about becoming adaptable. These nights have taught you how to bend without breaking, how to rest without full comfort, how to continue without certainty. As your breath slows and your body settles, you carry this endurance forward. It supports you through the night just as it will support you through the days to come. You rest not because the night is kind, but because you have learned how to live within it. As the journey draws on and nights continue to fold into one another, you find that sleep on the trail becomes something you remember even while you're still living it. Each freezing night leaves an imprint not sharp anymore but settled and familiar. When you lie down now, you recognize the sequence almost without thinking. The chill rising from the ground, the careful adjustment of blankets, the moment of stillness before rest begins. You no longer measure the night by comfort or discomfort. You measure it by survival, by continuity. Did you make it through? Did you wake able to move again? These questions replace softer expectations. The answer is almost always yes, and that becomes enough. You notice how memory smooths the edges of hardship. The cold is remembered, but so is the quiet beauty of frost under starlight. The stiffness is recalled alongside the relief of morning movement. Even the longest nights hold moments of calm moments that linger gently rather than painfully. You think about how these nights will be spoken of later. Not in detail perhaps, but in feeling. The way sleep was shallow and precious. The way warmth had to be earned. The way night demanded patience more than anything else. These memories will surface when you encounter cold again, even years from now, shaping how you respond. Lying still, you sense how the land itself has become part of your inner landscape. The open sky, the firm ground, the sounds that once startled now soothe. Sleep here has rewired your sense of safety, teaching you that rest does not require perfection, only persistence. Around you others lie much the same way. Different stories, different reasons for travelling, but the same night pressing equally on all. This shared experience binds you together in a quiet way. You may not speak of it, but you carry it collectively. As you breathe steadily, the night feels less like an obstacle and more like a passage, something to move through rather than resist. The cold still exists, but it no longer defines the experience. Endurance does. You allow your eyes to close fully now, trusting the patterns you have learned. The ground will be cold, sleep will be light, morning will come. These truths no longer unsettle you, they guide you. In this acceptance you find rest, not deep, not luxurious, but real, enough to sustain you, enough to carry you forward. And so when you think back on what it was like to sleep on the Oregon Trail, it's not only hardship that comes to mind. It is adaptability, quiet strength, the ability to lie beneath an open sky, wrapped in little more than cloth and resolve, and still find a way to rest. Word count 1103. As this long night settles into memory, you can let your own breathing slow. Imagine the cold easing its grip, the ground softening beneath you. The stars dim as dawn approaches, and with it movement and warmth. You do not need to rise now. You can rest here, safely removed from the hardships of the trail, carrying only the calm rhythm of endurance. The pioneers would rise stiff and tired, yet they would move again. You, however, may remain still. Let the quiet persistence of their nights guide you gently towards sleep. With nothing left to prove, and nowhere you must go, you can drift easily, now held by the knowledge that even the coldest nights eventually give way to light,